Oh, good. Oh, good. Hello, everybody. Oh, my goodness.
Morning.
Let's see.
Hello, everybody. We must have a long line of people waiting to enter. Martha, you're muted, so unmute.
Oh, good. So, what I was saying was, I'm delighted to have Dr. Ava in the audience here. She's the heir apparent to self-psychology. So, Dr. Ava, a real treat. And the rest of you, let's see. Wait a minute, get rid of that. Actually, oh, good. It's wonderful. So many of you. Oh, Barb Annunziato. Hello, Barb. Good. Forgive me if I'm, oh, there. Oh, we're almost starting. Okay, let me just look at the next page of, and people. Oh, wow. Yeah, I can only see a few of you at once. Yeah, I think everybody's muted, which is what we're asking. Oh, my goodness.
I want to go where you are, Martha. You look like you're in a wonderful place.
Yeah, really. Well, quite frankly, kind of cold up here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Um, Let me see. Oh, good. There I do see Kathy. Okay, it's all good. Oh, good. Oh, good. Appreciate that people are here.
Yeah. Well, one more minute. So let's just give people a chance to arrive, so they don't miss anything.
Today is a very special day for me. One, most importantly, I get to be presenting to all of you for the next 2+ hours. Then the U.S. Figure Skating Championships are on at 2 o'clock, the team competitions. And then later the Patriots are playing. And then the Golden Globes are on tonight. I mean, like, hello.
You're a
A
busy bee
wonderful
today.
day.
All right. Should we start?
Yes.
Okay. I want to welcome everybody, but as some of you heard, I want to let everybody know that this conference is being recorded, but it's being recorded for the presenter. It's not going to be available to the attendees. So thanks for um, bearing with us, and sorry that you can't see it. I do want to just make a couple of announcements.
But the
One,
PDFs of my slides are available to people and have been sent to you already, by the way.
yeah, you can just click on the link and get them. I am Meryl Dorff. I'm the director of CPPNJ, which is the Center for Psychotherapy and Psychoanalysis of New Jersey. And we have really quite a crowd here, I guess to the tribute of Martha. We really have, so we're going to make sure you're all muted so it's not noisy. But we're very excited to have so many people and so many new people to get to know us and Martha Stark. So that's great. A couple of announcements that this program's co-sponsored with NJSCSW, the the New Jersey Society for Clinical Social Work. Um, we have a lot of upcoming events. Watch our website at cppnj.org. We have Dr. Mark Bletchner coming to talk on dreams, and we have Dr. Lawrence Westreich going to talk about opioid addiction. Um, Let's see, just in terms of the structure, we're going to use the chat room today and not raise hands for questions. Martha will respond to questions and comments. So evaluations will be sent via email later today, and the certificates for your CEs will be sent out hopefully within 2 weeks. With so many people signed up, it's a little pressured, but we'll do our best. You must be present and your screen must be turned on from 11 to 1 to receive the CE credits. However, we do ask you to refrain from activities of daily living during the conference, such as folding your laundry or eating, as it's very distracting to the presenter. So in the event that you must do one of those things, please briefly turn off your screen until you're finished with your task.
So you're finished chewing your gum. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, I also want to let people know that Martha invites emails, and we will put it in the chat room, but her email address is marthastarkmd@synergymed.solutions, and we will put it in the chat room as well. All right. Whew, that's a lot. I will turn this over now to Michael Lepak to introduce Dr. Stark.
Thank you, Meryl.
Thank you,
Mhm.
Meryl. Good morning, everyone. Today, I do have the absolute pleasure of introducing Dr. Martha Stark. Her presentation with us today is entitled A Rock Feels No Pain and an Island Never Cries, an existential humanistic approach to repairing a shattered heart and easing relentless despair. Dr. Stark is a graduate of Harvard Medical School and the Boston Psychoanalytic Institute. She is currently a lecturer in the psychiatry department at Harvard Medical School. She is co-founder, co-director, and on the faculty of the Center for Psychoanalytic Studies at William James College. She is also faculty at the Smith College School of Social Work. She is a holistic psychiatrist and integrative psychoanalyst in private practice in Boston, Mass, and Clearwater, Florida. She is the author of 9 highly acclaimed books on the integration of psychodynamic theory and clinical practice, including the award-winning book, Modes of Therapeutic Action. This book was the recipient of the prestigious Jason Aronson's Book of the Year Award. Many of her books have become required reading at numerous psychodynamic and psychoanalytic programs in the US and abroad. She is the originator and developer of the Stark method of psychodynamic synergy, which is a multifaceted approach to deep embodied healing. This has been just a small snapshot of Dr. Stark's impact on the field of psychotherapy and psychoanalysis. Dr. Stark also has a long, rich history with our institute. She has presented with us both in 2018 and way back in 2001. Her books have been part of the curriculum for several of our classes over the years. So it is with much gratitude and excitement that we welcome back to CPPNJ Dr. Martha Stark.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Dr. Stark.
Thank you so much, Michael, for that wonderful introduction. And when you had reached out to me months and months ago now, I was just so happy to hear from you. So it's all good. So let me just, this is the only part that really gets me nervous. I'm going to try to kind of get this, and you'll let me know, please. Do you see my slides?
Yes,
Oh,
looks
good. We
good.
got it. Thumbs up. Thank you so much. All right. And let me just make it a little bigger so I can read them. Um, okay. Okay. Well, anyway, bless you all for being here. This is the model 4 of the Stark, notice the star, method of psychodynamic synergy, a CARES approach to deep embodied healing. And special appreciation for Michael, Kathy, Merle, and Dave Howard, who's on some level making all of this possible. All right, so let me just see here. Oops. Yeah, that's me. Busy at work on creating my PowerPoints. I just love the minions. Simon and Garfunkel's well-known I Am a Rock captures to perfection the essence of the Model 4 patient's experience of being in the world. A winter's day in a deep and dark December, I am alone, gazing from my window to the streets below, on a freshly fallen, silent shroud of snow. I'm a rock. I am an island. I've built walls, a fortress deep and mighty that none may penetrate. I have no need of friendship. Friendship causes pain. Its laughter and its loving I disdain. I am a rock. I am an island. Don't talk of love. Well, I've heard the word before. It's sleeping in my memory. I won't disturb the slumber of feelings that have died. If I never loved, I never would have cried. I am a rock. I am an island. I have my books and my poetry to protect me. I am shielded in my armor, hiding in my room, safe within my womb. I touch no one, and no one touches me. I am a rock. I am an island. And a rock feels no pain, and an island never cries. Now, if I could ask, please, MJ, there's a lot of movement at your end. Could you either maybe turn your camera off or I would appreciate that. Thank you. It's a little distracting. Thank you, Mindy. Thank you. Okay, good. A rock feels no pain and an island never cries. When past experiences of neglect and rejection haunt us, the thought of intimacy becomes fraught with fear and vulnerability, evoking a paralyzing dread and further retreat from the world. That's what I'm going to be talking about today. Model 4, an existential humanistic approach to mending brokenness and easing relentless despair. In my briefly mentioned the Stark method of psychodynamic synergy, but Model 1 is a cognitive approach, the interpretive perspective of classical psychoanalysis. Model 2 is a corrective provision approach to the corrective provision approach of self-psychology and other deficit theories. Model 3 is an intersubjective approach to the intersubjective perspective of contemporary relational theory. Model 4, this is Model 4, and Model 5, the most recent addition to my paradigm, is a quantum neuroscientific approach to managing analysis paralysis and neural entrenchment. But this is mostly Model 4. So in essence, Model 1 is more cognitive, privileges, cognitive. Model 2, privileges, affective. Model 3, privileges, relational. Model 4, privileges, existential, humanistic. And Model 5, privileges, synaptic, and superpositional. But in essence, then, the Stark method of psychodynamic synergy is a CARES approach to deep embodied healing. I was delighted when I figured that out. All right. I gave you a part of me that I knew you could break, but you didn't. That as being at the heart of the therapeutic action in Model 4. This is the gift that we give those of our patients whose hearts have been shattered and who, at least on some level, are now terrified that their hearts will be once again broken. What the Model 4 patient most needs in the treatment is to discover that she can surrender what is most private, vulnerable, and precious without then being destroyed again. As we shall see, ultimately, here are a bunch of big words here. Ultimately, the therapeutic goal in this existential humanistic approach to repairing a shattered heart and reclaiming life. Now, let me also clarify these 5 modes of therapeutic action. Every patient has aspects of all 5. But some land more obviously and more of the time in, or more as backdrop in one or another of the models. So Model 1 would be more like neurotic stuff. Model 2, more like narcissistic stuff. Model 3, more like character disordered stuff. Model 4, more like, to some extent, trauma and just sort of schizoid and heartbreak. And then model five, little t traumas, big T traumas, and when quite frankly, the other four in the moment aren't quite getting you to where you want to be, and the old bad narratives are so deeply entrenched that no matter what you're doing in the way of one, two, three, or four, there's analysis paralysis and there's no real movement. So now, when I introduced, I'd had models one, two, three, and my modes of therapeutic action book was about models one, two, and three. Although I finally, after several decades, decided to reread the book, which made me very anxious. But I did, and I realized that thank you, Meryl, for your smile. But I realized that I had the seeds of Model 4 kind of written in there. And it was actually my dear friend Larry Hedges who told me, Martha, he knew my theory well enough to know the following. He said, Martha, Model 1, structural conflict, neurotic conflict, structural conflict. Model 2, structural deficit, impaired capacity. Model 3, relational conflict. Model 4, you need relational deficit. Well, I resisted that, not wanting to be too resilient. I already had my three models, thank you very much. And so it was some years before I finally like, oh my God, of course I need to have model 4, which is relational deficit. So structural conflict, model 1, classical psychoanalytic theory. Structural deficit, model 2, self-psychology. Relational conflict, a la Stephen Mitchell and plenty of others, model 3, contemporary relational. And model 4, relational deficit, an existential humanistic approach. That's what this is about. And interestingly, when I added model 4, everybody all over from around the world almost sort of said, oh, good, now you're talking about me. These are therapists. Oh, now you're talking about me. And it's sort of like, again, we all have aspects of all of these. But anyway, model 4, and I've found now that I've really sort of conceptualized in the way that I have, I almost feel I need to go back and apologize to all the patients I was seeing prior to my sort of getting it about model 4. But I do now have it, and it has deepened and enriched my work tremendously in really embracing model 4. And I thank Larry Hedges. Thank you, thank you. Okay, as we shall see, ultimately, the therapeutic goal in this existential humanistic model is a paradoxical one. The goal is not the absence of despair, but the capacity to hold in mind simultaneously, at the same time, the dialectical tension between hope and despair, longing and dread, vitality and fatigue, claiming space and shrinking back without collapsing into either pole. Dialectical tension, paradoxically holding in mind both. Psychological growth emerges when the patient can sustain the tension between these opposing truths without being overtaken by either one. In the evocative words of the existentialist Jean-Paul Sartre, life begins on the other side of despair. But now, some people never even think in terms of, some patients, some people, despair or dread or shrinking back, and they're not troubled by some of these existential issues. And the rest of us, many of us, know and understand the concept of relentless despair. So whereas my model 2 you're going to hear is about relentless hope, model 3, the character disordered one, is about relentless outrage that gets compulsively and unwittingly reenacted on the stage of one's life and in the treatment if all goes well. And then model 4 is relentless despair. So there you go. Model 1, by the way, is relentless conflictedness between defiance and compliance. Can I defy or must I comply? Can I be bad or must I be good? That's model 1. But anyway, so model 4, back to model 4. Psychological growth emerges when the patient can sustain the tension between these opposing truths. You don't get rid of the despair. It's just there alongside of a more positive, hopeful stance. As we shall soon see, Model 4 then speaks to the healing power of things in quotes are, I'm lifting it from these authors, environmental provision, a holding, facilitating environment through good enough mothering, obviously Winnicott. The therapist accompanies the patient as she gradually dares to overcome, this is Masood Khan, dares to overcome, I love this, her dread of surrender, the patient's dread of surrender to resourceless dependence on the therapist. Parenthetically, and Karen Rhoda and some others as well highlight that not only is it for the patient to overcome her dread of surrender to the analytic process, but also on some level, the therapist, if you're really going to go there in Model 4, and a lot of therapists never go there, but if you're really going to go there, then it involves at your end as well. And sometimes I think in terms of Model 4 as being a story about, it's always from defense to adaptation, a graduated progression from defense to adaptation. The defenses start with R, the adaptations start with A. So in Model 4, it would be from retreat, defensive retreat, to adaptive accessibility or availability. See the A words there? Or from a more existential point of view, from relational, there's the R word, relational absence, to authentic presence. There's the A word, okay, from R to A, by way of a series of healing cycles, graduated advancement. It's never a straight line. It's a series, iterative series of cycles of destabilization in reaction to challenge, and then restabilization in response to support. And that's optimal stress, but that's not in the moment what I'm talking about. So anyway, the therapist accompanies the patient as she gradually dares to overcome her dread of surrender to resourceless dependence, what Winnicott would talk about as absolute dependence, and what we could also describe as existential or ontological dependence. Okay, thereby allowing for, and this is in the words of Ofra Eshel, the Israeli psychoanalyst, thereby allowing for the emergence of, oh, analytic oneness. Is that like priceless or what? And Michael Bolland, benign regression to a new beginning. Okay, overview. Now, there's a lot of big words here, but I just want to kind of give you a feel. Some of them we'll be dealing with, and some of them not, because we only have limited time, and I have several vignettes that I want to present. So, Model 2, relentless hope. Model 3, relentless outrage. Model 4, relentless despair, just to contextualize. So, Model 4, the therapeutic goal from relational absence, I already said that, to authentic presence, from retreat to accessibility, or we could say from relentless despair to authentic moments of meeting. Now, this is very fancy, a lot of big words here, but from nihilistic rejection of existence to existential acceptance, there's the A word, of its dualities, polarities, complementarities, paradoxes, and uncertainties. But that's the dialectical tension that I was talking about. It's not like you get rid of the despair. It's like, oh, I don't have despair anymore. If you've been up to a place of being able to name it and know that it's despair and dread that you feel, you never get rid of that. I mean, I think there's some people who are, maybe they're drug addicts, for example, and I don't think they would ever use the word despair. It just happens that they're totally addicted and so on. But for those who have, on some level, had the courage, I never even said or thought this before, have the courage, Meryl, your smile, I think, helped me with this. For people who have the courage to let themselves know that they feel a kind of dread and despair, right? And then they wonder, can I ever get over it? Well, it will be that in conjunction with, side by side, a more hopeful, more energized existence. Okay, Frankl, Viktor Frankl, existential despair, he wrote about search for meaning, man's search for meaning, or person's search for meaning. But he said man. Heidegger, inauthentic being in the world. This is the overview. I'll reference some of these in what follows. Winnicott, the false public self. versus the true private self, the good enough mother, fear of impingement, his words, by a maternal, it could be a parental environment. He said maternal, so we'll keep it, I guess, as maternal. Impingement by a maternal environment perceived as intrusive and potentially dangerous. Botland, the area of the basic fault, benign regression to dependence, and these lovely words that just make my heart happy: harmonious, interpenetrating mix up. That would be like the emergence of Ofra Eschel's analytic oneness. And then blissful, peaceful merger and new beginning. That's Michael Ballant. And Anna Ornstein always told me I didn't really quite pronounce. She was so lovely and compassionate about it, but I didn't really say the word Bolland well enough. So I've really been trying, and this is Anna and Paul are very much in my heart, as I know they are in Dr. Ava's as well. Okay, Masud Khan, overcoming the dread of surrender to resourceless or existential, ontological, or absolute dependence. Modell, Arne Modell up here in Boston, denial of object need, schizoid retreat to affective non-relatedness. So it wouldn't be necessarily, you might think, oh, compartmentalization or isolation of affect or intellectualization as the defense. Those are one-person defenses, Model 1. Here, Model 4, the defense of affective non-relatedness, which can look like compartmentalization, isolation of affect, intellectualization, but is really just a terror of delivering affect and heartfelt into relationship. Modell talks about, and this just spot on, illusions of grandiose self-sufficiency. Thank you very much. I can do it myself. Self-protective isolation and a precariously established self. These are Arne Modell's words. And then R.D. Laing, the divided self, ontological insecurity, existential dread. I mean, isn't it lovely? They're all kind of talking about the same thing. Oh, and Kahn also talks about the privacy of the self. I didn't put that there, should have. Donald Burnham, the need-fear dilemma, when he was talking about schizodynamics. But the need-fear dilemma, very much at the heart of these Model 4 people who, on the one hand, yearn and long to be in relationship and to find authentic moments of meeting. On the other hand, the terror is of the merger and losing the self. So then they retreat, but then there's the terror of ego dissolution when you're all off by yourself. So it's this terrible, whereas in Model 1, the neurotic conflictedness between can I be bad or must I be good, defiance versus compliance, and intra-psychic conflict. In Model 4, it's an intra-psychic conflict, but it has to do with relatedness. Okay, so let's see, where are we? Yes, internal dividedness, said Burnham. Okay, Guntrip, Harry Guntrip, schizoid withdrawal. Okay, and emotional detachment, right? They're all saying the same thing. They just use different delicious words. And Ofra Eschel, core unthinkable breakdown, close to the kind of thing Winnicott would say. And then the emergence of analytic oneness. All right, so Model 4 facilitation statements. For each of my 5 models, I suggest as prototypes. You don't have to say it exactly this way, but people always say, well, what do you do with these different whatevers? And so all 5 of my modes of therapeutic action involve the creation of optimally stressful, that means just the right balance between challenge and support, growth incentivizing, meaning that it provides impetus and opportunity, mismatch experiences between, well, you could say just about anything, defense and adaptation, or you could say between old bad and new good, old bad, new good. Think about EMDR. I do EMDR. I trained a little bit 3 decades ago. I don't do it very well, but I do it. And I know the concept of left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. And in essence, I believe that in all deep embodied treatments, at the end of the day, it really does involve the creation of optimally stressful, growth incentivizing mismatch experiences between something bad and something good. Old bad and new good. That in quotes. Okay, so facilitation statements. Well, I lifted this from Winnicott, didn't I? The word facilitation, the facilitating or holding environment, Model 4. Highlight these statements which are going to offer both challenge and support, because all of the statements, whether Model 1 conflict statements, Model 2 disillusionment statements to facilitate grieving of relentless hope, or Model 3, you have projective identification, you're working that through, but relational interventions, or Model 4, these facilitation statements, or Model 5, there are quantum disentanglement statements that juxtapose in the very same way. So Model 4 highlight the paradoxical conflict between the desperate desire to be known and the paralyzing terror of being found. I mean, imagine living with that. Or the relentless search for meaning. I have a patient right now who is struggling mightily with both all of this and the annihilating experience of nothingness. Okay, Model 4 facilitation statements are designed for patients who, whether in the moment or more characterologically, so whether more state, acute state, or more chronic trait, have self-protectively retreated from engagement with the world of objects, and quite frankly, from the world, period, because it simply hurts too much. So Model 4 facilitation statements, in essence, highlight with compassion and never judgment the patient's anguished ambivalence about being authentically engaged in the world. Just think about it as that. And so when they, instead of coming each week or instead of coming twice a week, they want to come sort of like every other week. I mean, that could be for any of a number of reasons, but it could speak to that for them, it is such torment to be daring to deliver themselves every week into the relationship. And for us, with compassion, never judgment, to recognize the conflict within them between a part of you would want desperately to be seen, known, and understood. This is a facilitation statement. But another part of you is terrified of being found. And you say that to a patient who either in the moment or more characterologically is in a state of protective retreat. They'll say, yes, and it almost brings them to tears. Now, let me also say for anybody who might want to say, well, and they're thinking about IFS and Dick Schwartz, et cetera, and they're thinking, a part of you would want desperately to be seen, known, and understood. And another part of you is terrified of being found. You can go and or but. For some reason, I tend to just slip into but, even though it's also kind of and. Or here, a part of you would wish that you could trust me, but another part of you holds back for fear of being betrayed yet again. Too many people have already broken your heart. All right, so anyway, so these facilitation statements express the therapist's profound appreciation for the complexity of the patient's experience of being in relationship and being in the world. And in speaking to different parts of the patient's self-experience, these statements are honoring the collage of selves that constitute the whole. Okay, good. All right. Nice to have you back, Mindy, although there's still a lot of movement. Okay, good. So maybe just still, that's still, I think. All right. Cautionary words regarding our work with Model 4 patients. Beware of engaging in heady intellectual work, wherein, as cognitive insights about the patient begin to unfold, both patient and therapist become gently lulled into a false sense of shared satisfaction, creating a comforting and self-congratulatory illusion of progress, when in truth, the therapy is actually being done on the patient's false self and not penetrating to the core of the patient's true self at all. Indeed, in his later years, Winnicott came to the sobering conclusion that there had probably been many times in his own clinical work when therapeutic progress might have appeared to be happening, but when in reality it had only been happening as if. Again, because the work was actually being done on the patient's false, compliant self, with the patient's true, authentic self remaining concealed, unexposed, unseen and untouched. You know, Mindy, could you again just put the camera off? You're the one that I'm seeing, and there's so much movement. So thank you for that. I apologize. All right. I actually have a friend, or so I had thought, thank you, Mindy. I have a friend who I thought we were having like a real relationship, but in truth, I was really just engaging with her false self, which eventually I came to understand. And it was painful because I was feeling all sorts of stuff. She, not at all. Okay. So there are patients who, so I'm going to be comparing Model 4 to Model 2 and 3. There are patients who, having never fully confronted and grieved the pain of their early on heartbreak, grieving is such an important part of working through relentless hope and working through all sorts of things. These patients who have never fully grieved the pain of their early on heartbreak will cling tenaciously to their hope that perhaps someday the object of their desire will be forthcoming. This isn't just about our patients, it's also about us, all of us, right? All of us on some level. Be that object, the infantile object, a contemporary object, or the transference object. And when thwarted in their desire, these patients will be devastated and outraged. But there are other patients who, in the after, so relentless hope and relentless outrage, Model 2, Model 3. But there are other patients who, in the aftermath of their early on heartbreak, will find themselves withdrawing completely from the world of objects, their hearts shattered. So I'm distinguishing between the relentless hope of Model 2 and the relentless outrage of Model 3 and the relentless despair of Model 4. Only then to find themselves, these Model 4 patients who have retreated, only then self-protectively to find themselves overwhelmed by intense feelings of isolation, alienation, and despair. The competent, accomplished, cheerful, compliant, false public self they present to the world, belying the truth that lies hidden within, namely their devastating heartbreak, private pain, harrowing loneliness, and annihilating terror, as well as their stymied creativity and desperate, albeit conflicted, longing for meaningful connectedness with the world and with life itself. The false self presented to the world belies the painful truths hidden within. Instead of relentless hope, which figures prominently in my self-psychological model 2, an absence of good model that focuses on the patient's relentless pursuit, therefore, of new good, or relentless outrage, which figures prominently in my contemporary relational model 3, a presence of bad model that focuses on the patient's compulsive and unwitting reenactment of old bad. The experience of being in the world for Model 4 patients is one of relentless despair, a profound hopelessness they keep hidden behind the false self mask they present to the world, a self-protective armor that conceals the deeply entrenched brokenness of the true self and its thwarted potential. I grew to understand that people don't always build walls to keep others out. There are times it is done out of a necessity to protect whatever is left within. Whereas the relentless hope of the Model 2 patient and the relentless outrage of the Model 3 patient speak to ongoing and intense, albeit conflicted, engagement with the world of objects. The relentless despair of the Model 4 patient speaks to the utter lack of any real engagement with the world of objects, despite the patient's secret and intense, albeit conflicted, yearning for meaningful and authentic connectedness with others. In other words, Model 2 and Model 3 patients are still desperately holding on, but the Model 4 patient has self-protectively let go. The Model 4 patient's defensive, self-protective retreat into non-relatedness will therefore reflect either a fleeting state-dependent reaction, in essence, a momentary state, experienced by the patient in the immediate aftermath of a profoundly wounded heart, or a more enduring characterological stance, in essence, a defining character trait, shaped by a heart so repeatedly wounded over time and with such relentless consistency that the patient has withdrawn almost entirely from the world of objects, having relinquished all hope for meaningful, authentic moments of meeting. In other words, the distinction is between something the patient passes through, acute insult, and something the patient has been shaped into, cumulative damage. Okay. Oh, Robert. Okay. Robert, a dear man with Asperger's, a clinical vignette. Here we go. So now I want to share with you a story about my patient, Robert, a dear man with on the autism spectrum disorder. Robert was a brilliantly prolific, well-known writer, ever gracious and polite. Everybody liked him, although people didn't really matter all that much to him. Nonetheless, this dear man somehow managed to be in therapy with me for many years, but mostly because his wife Jane insisted that he keep coming. So he and I decided to make the most of it and settled into a very comfortable routine of weekly conversations, as we called them, in which we discussed things like complex adaptive, nonlinear dynamical, self-organizing chaotic systems, and this, our confusing world made up of islands of predictability amidst a sea of chaotic unpredictability. Actually, we had a great time of it. And Jane was extremely grateful because she felt that over time, Robert was indeed becoming much more present in their relationship and engaged. Among other things, I would have him memorize certain socially appropriate behaviors. For example, that he needed to make a fuss over Jane's birthday, and that he needed to make some effort to stay in touch with his adult kids, every now and then, anyway. He told me that I was helping him to appreciate the importance of using his intelligence to figure out what he should be doing in different situations. We decided to call it cognitive empathy, doing the right thing, not from the heart, but from the head. Jane, albeit a bit controlling, was a good woman who loved Robert dearly, and Robert was extremely attached to her and loved her very much, even though he had difficulty telling her that. So one day I found a poem that I thought captured beautifully the essence of Robert's feelings for her. He and I decided to rewrite it in order to make it a custom fit. He wanted to call the poem To Jane from Robert. But I told him he should call it To Jane with Love from Robert. So he did. We invited Jane to join us for one of our sessions so that Robert could read our poem to her. You say it is hard to keep waiting for me to say I love you too, but I have been telling you every day. In many ways, you never knew. It pours down upon the umbrella that I hold for you in the rain, is captured when I kiss your bruises in order to relieve your pain. It's in the cake I bake for you and offer you the biggest slice. And when you tell me that you love it, how I then bake it for you twice. It's buckled into the seat belt I always tell you to put on, and in all the ways that I miss you whenever I find that you're gone. Maybe I don't say those 4 words, I love you too, in the routine and standard way. So please let my actions speak louder than anything that I might say. So if you are tired of waiting for those 4 words to leave my throat, all I can all I can say is that outside it's cold. So don't forget to take your coat. As Jane listened, she wept and said it helped her to understand. Well, Jane and I were weeping, actually. Robert wasn't. But she wept and said it helped her to understand him a little better. And then she leaned over and kissed him tenderly on the lips, a kiss he returned. Robert, by then 58, died a little while later. He had been suddenly stricken with terminal cancer, but told me matter-of-factly that he was not afraid to die. He said that his family would be better off after he died because of his generous life insurance policy. Robert wanted to continue our work right up to the end, not because Jane told him to. He wanted to. Interestingly, never once did he flinch in the face of his impending death. It held no fear for him. Unlike Dylan Thomas's "Do not go gentle into that good night," in which Thomas is urging his father to rage, rage against the dying of the light, Robert accepted with grace and dignity the fact that he would be dying from his cancer. Those many of us who loved Robert still grieve his passing. Okay, well, thank you. All right, so let's see. Oh, okay, find someone to love. Okay, good. Here's another one. Love, Anthony is a beautiful, loving, and poignant novel that Lisa Genova, a best-selling author and neuroscientist, writes about Anthony, an autistic boy who never spoke, who loved Barney, the number 3, and lining up rocks, who did not like to be touched and who did not make eye contact, but who taught his mom an incredible lesson about loving. Also, Model 4. As the author writes the book and Anthony's autism becomes more familiar to her, she begins to see more and more the ways in which she and he are similar. She chews her fingernails as a form of self-soothing. She feels calm when her house is clean and all the picture frames level and centered. She cannot stand the thought of someone else sitting in her seat at the library. She feels agitated when there is too much noise around her, and sometimes she just needs to be alone. And as the author continues to write, she comes to see that their real similarities have nothing to do with autism. She begins to realize that the book is more about Anthony, the boy, than Anthony, the boy with autism. Autism becomes almost irrelevant, and eventually she is simply writing about Anthony, a person worthy of happiness and safety, of feeling wanted and loved, just like her. The more she writes about Anthony, the more she realizes that she is actually writing about herself. Anthony teaches her a lesson her heart needed to learn, which is captured in a fictional letter that he writes to her prior to his untimely death at age 8 from a grand mal seizure. Dear Mom, you already possess the answers to your questions. You already hold them in your heart, but your mind still resists. I understand that sometimes we need reassurance to hear the words, "I love you too," a two-way conversation. But I wasn't here to do the things you dreamed and even feared I'd do before I was born. I wasn't here to play Little League, go to the prom, go to college, go to war, become a doctor or a lawyer or a mathematician, although I would have been great at that one. I wasn't here to be married, to have children and grandchildren, or to grow to be an old man. All that has been done or will be done. And I wasn't here to help others understand immunology, gastroenterology, genetics, or neuroscience. I wasn't here to solve the riddle of autism. Those answers are for another time. I came here to simply be, and autism was the vehicle of my being. Although my short life was difficult at times, I found great joy in being Anthony. Autism made it difficult to connect with you and Dad and other people through things like eye contact and conversation and your activities. But I wasn't interested in connecting in those ways, so I felt no deprivation in this. I connected in other ways, through the song of your voices, the energy of your emotions, the comfort in being near you, and sometimes in moments I treasured through sharing the experience of something I loved, the blue sky, my rocks, the three pigs story. And you, Mom, I loved you. You have asked if I felt and understood that you loved me. Of course I did. And you know this. I loved your love because it kept me safe and happy and wanted. And it existed beyond words and hugs and eyes. This brings me to the other reason I was here. I was here for you, Mom. I was here to teach you about love. Most people love with a guarded heart, only if certain things happen or don't happen, only to a point. If the person we love hurts us, betrays us, abandons us, disappoints us, if the person becomes hard to love, we often stop loving. We protect our delicate hearts. We close off, retreat, withhold, disconnect, and withdraw. We might even hate. Most people love conditionally. Most people, most people are never asked to love with a whole and open heart. They only love part way. They get by. Autism was my gift to you. My autism didn't let me hug and kiss you. It didn't allow me to look into your eyes. It didn't let me say aloud the words you so desperately wanted to hear with your ears. But you loved me anyway. You're thinking, of course I did. Anyone would have. This isn't true. Loving me with a full and accepting heart, loving all of me, required you to grow. Despite your heartache and disappointment, your fears and frustration and sorrow, despite all I couldn't show you in return, you came to love me and to love me unconditionally. You haven't experienced this kind of love with Dad or your parents or your sister or anyone else before. But now you know what unconditional love is. I know my death has hurt you, and you've needed time alone to heal. You'll still miss me. I miss you too, but you're ready now. Take what you've learned and love someone again. Find someone to love and love without condition. This is why we're all here. Love, Anthony. Whew. Whew. All righty. Okay. Motto 4, a heart shattered, the private self, and a life unlived. Secrets, lies, and pretensions. The shattering of a heart when being broken is the loudest quiet ever. Carol Bryant. Okay, real quick. Viktor Frankl's existential despair. He wrote D equals S minus M. Existential despair equals suffering without meaning. My slight paraphrase, in keeping with Model 4, relentless despair equals solitary suffering without meaningful moments of meeting, without those precious, cherished moments of authentic meeting with others that have the potential to give one's life meaning, purpose, and direction. Treasured moments that the Model 4 patient rarely experiences. Martin Heidegger, the importance of authenticity as giving meaning, purpose, and direction to a person's life. On the one hand, authentic being in the world refers to the ability to live one's life according to the needs of one's inner being, rather than to the demands of one's early conditioning or of society. It always involves this element of freedom and choice. On the other hand, inauthenticity, false self, refers, and in schizoid retreat, refers to living one's life as determined by outside forces, expectations, pressures, and demands. Heidegger's authentic existence, in essence, is equivalent to Winnicott's true private self, a self that is also creative and spontaneous, a life that is real at the core. The goal in life is always a striving toward authentic being in the world, said Heidegger. And we would say towards gaining access to and expressing one's true authentic self, a la Winnicott. Heidegger's inauthentic existence is equivalent to Winnicott's false public self or social self, a self that is compliant and accommodating, but a life that is not real, a life unlived. Model 4. Okay. All right. Kelly Clarkson's, let me just see here. All right. Kelly Clarkson's emotionally raw, vulnerable, and hauntingly beautiful songs speak of the heartbreak and subsequent shutdown that she experienced because of her father's traumatic abandonment of her and her family when she was only 6 years old, the essence of which she captures in her well known and anguished song entitled Because of You, parts of which I will quote here. A song she herself wrote in which she makes reference to the false self she now presents to the world in order to cover the pain of her early on heartbreak at the hands of her father. Because of you, I never stray too far from the sidewalk. Because of you, I learned to play on the safe side so I don't get hurt. Because of you, I find it hard to trust not only me, but everyone around me. Because of you, I am afraid. I lose my way, and it's not too long before you point it out. I cannot cry because I know that's weakness in your eyes. I'm forced to fake a smile, a laugh every day of my life. My heart can't possibly break when it wasn't even whole to start with. Because of you, I never stray too far from the sidewalk. Because of you, I learned to play on the safe side so I don't get hurt. Because of you, I try my hardest just to forget everything. Because of you, I don't know how to let anyone else in. Because of you, I'm ashamed of my life because it's empty. Because of you, I am afraid. Because of you. Okay. The narrative poem Richard Cory, wait a minute, also captures poignantly the great divide that can exist between the public or false self and the private or true self. Here we go. Whenever Richard Cory went downtown, we people on the pavement looked at him. He was a gentleman from sole to crown, clean favored and imperially slim. And he was always quietly arrayed, and he was always human when he talked. But still he fluttered pulses when he said good morning, and he glittered when he walked. And he was rich, yes, richer than a king, and admirably schooled in every grace. In fine, we thought that he was everything, to make us wish that we were in his place. So on we worked till dawn, waiting for the light, and went without the meat and cursed the bread. And Richard Cory, one calm summer night, went home and put a bullet through his head. On the surface of things, Richard Cory appeared to have it all: riches, grace, impeccable good manners, charm, glitter, imperial good looks. But despite his regal bearing and enviable wealth, his life was empty and internally impoverished. And one calm summer night, he simply went home and put a bullet through his head to end it all. Okay, finally, and then back to a little more theory. All right, Chesley Christ. 30 years old, high achieving, a beautiful soul with ever so many accomplishments, a track star in high school. Let me actually, here we go. a track star in high school, an honors student in college, an MBA and a JD from Wake Forest University, a practicing attorney advocating for social justice and civil rights, an entrepreneur, financially successful, a role model who inspired women around the world, a model featured on the cover of magazines, a beauty queen, Miss North Carolina, Miss USA in 2019, a television host every weekday night on the entertainment news program Extra, which I listened to every night, a respected interviewer of celebrities on the red carpet at the pinnacle of a spectacular career, beloved by a wide circle of friends, including me, daily conversations with her cherished mom, to whom she referred as her superhero, described by all as the embodiment of love and a ball of sunshine wrapped in smiles. She killed herself. So I wrote a poem for her. Let me just wait a minute here. I'm so sorry. Oh dear. Okay, well, I'm sorry. I'm trying to do something here. All right. So I wrote a poem for her. Whenever Chesley Christ went downtown, we people on the pavement gazed at her with admiration and awe. We people in television land gazed at her with admiration and awe. She was the embodiment of perfection from soul to crown, dazzlingly beautiful and imperially slim. And she was always so fashionably attired, and always so gracious whenever she spoke. But still she fluttered pulses when she would announce extra, extra, and she glittered when she walked. A practicing attorney and an entrepreneur, she lived in a luxury midtown Manhattan high rise. In fine, we thought that she was everything to make us wish that we were in her place. But the mantle of perfection and stellar achievements that she donned every day became eventually too heavy to bear. So Chesley Christ, one cold winter morn, got up and leapt to her death from the 25th floor. May Chesley rest in peace. I mean, I was listening to her on the TV show the day before, 2 days before, just heartbreak. Okay, Donna Winnicott's false self. I know there's a lot here. It's like, oh my God. Indeed relevant with respect to Kelly Clarkson, Richard Corey, and Chesley Christ is Winnicott's concept, Model 4 concept of the false self, a self-protective, defensive armor mobilized early on in life to protect the privacy of the true self from impingement. Winnicott always talks about impingement by a maternal environment perceived as intrusive and potentially dangerous. The person who eventually develops, it crystallizes out, a false self never had the experience of a good enough mother able to provide a protective envelope, a facilitating or holding environment, within which the young child's inherited potential could become actualized. At a time when it is age appropriate for the infant to have an unfalteringly reliable mother upon whom she can be absolutely dependent, the mother's inability to meet the omnipotence of her young child, those are Winnicott's words, meet the omnipotence of her young child will be completely annihilating. As a result, the nascent true self of the infant, the potential source of spontaneity, creativity, and personal agency, will go into hiding, avoiding at all cost the possibility of exposing itself without being recognized and responded to, Winnicott's words. Its essence will therefore remain incommunicado, says Winnicott. Its core, unseen, unacknowledged, undeveloped. It is a joy to be hidden, but a disaster not to be found. And some people, in quoting Winnicott, say it's a joy to be hidden and a disaster not to be found. Again, but and whatever. Winnicott. I love that one. When the true self is not recognized and responded to, what then crystallizes out over time will be a false self, a public or social self that will gradually become ever more adept at accommodating itself chameleon-like to whatever it senses is expected of it, all the while keeping hidden its underlying anguish and heartbroken despair. The person will live, but the existence will be empty, hollow, shallow, false, and desperately lonely. Just think, Richard Corey, oh heavens, somebody got excited there. Richard Corey and Chesley Christ. Oh dear, I guess I did that. I got excited, I guess. Anyway, it will be a lie, but it will be a lie, one based on compliance and conformity, not one based on authenticity and truth. The person will make a show of being real, but will only be a semblance of the truth. It will only be as if she is alive, because her life will have become a sham, a charade, a part she's playing, a borrowed identity assumed for the occasion, a life unlived because she's living a lie. Secrets, pretensions, concealments. To facilitate conceptualization of the therapeutic action in Model 4, we will therefore be drawing upon Winnicott's depiction, and others as well, but I'm going to focus on Winnicott, of the young child's, it's a maturational progression, maturational, automatic maturation, though you might get stuck, you might unsuccessfully navigate or negotiate one of the stages, but nonetheless, you still move on. Maturational progression from absolute dependence, first stage, to relative dependence. And then, of course, it's towards autonomy. But anyway, absolute dependence to relative dependence. Successful advancement from absolute dependence to relative dependence and ultimately to this third stage of towards autonomy is a result, says Winnicott, of the therapeutic provision of a holding or facilitating environment, which I believe is at the heart of the therapeutic action in Model 4 that will bring about deep embodied change, provided by a good enough parent, mother, able to meet the omnipotence of her young child. That is, an affectively attuned mother able to recognize and respond to each and every one of her young child's needs, having often anticipated many of them prior even to the child's having signaled her desire. I had a patient who needed and wanted me to, before she came into the session, that I was to move the chair, her chair, a little closer to me, which was a little awkward for me. It didn't feel quite as right for me, but it was really important that I do that. So I then decided, all righty, I've got this. And you better believe I never once forgot. And then and she knew I would then put it back a little bit, which was a little more comfortable for me. And she knew that I was doing this for her, and it meant the world to her. I had another patient where similar sort of something at the end of our years of work together, where, I mean, just a beautiful work that he and I did together. I asked him at the end what had been most meaningful for him. And I was thinking maybe he would say, well, your profound interpretations, or you're this or that or whatever. And what he said was, well, the fact that somehow you knew that it was really important to me that when we were apart, because back then you take a week off, say, and you didn't have Zoom or those things, it was a long time ago. He said, you would know that when you were away, you would write me postcards when you were away. That you knew that was important to me. That's the thing that most mattered to me. So I'm like, well, so much for the other stuff, but that's fine. All right, here we go. All right. Relevant also. Okay, here, wait a minute. Okay, good. Relevant also is Masood Khan's concept of giving patients who have emotionally withdrawn from the world of objects an opportunity to, I'd said this on the earlier slide, overcome their dread of surrender to resourceless dependence on the therapist. An emotional surrender that will hopefully be experienced by the patient as transcendent, liberating, and transformative. Khan's resourceless dependence is, of course, akin to Winnicott's absolute dependence and the existential ontological dependence to which I had earlier made reference, and that's Fabrice. Okay, all right, here we go. I present now a clinical vignette that demonstrates the powerfully healing impact of a therapist's willingness to honor her patient's need for omnipotent control of her objects when that age-appropriate developmental need had been traumatically thwarted as opposed to optimally thwarted. Optimally thwarted means offers impetus and opportunity for there to be ultimately growth and transformation. Traumatic thwarting means, if anything, the need becomes defensively reinforced. Okay. Therapist's willingness, it's in my case, it's me actually, to honor her patient's need for omnipotent control of her objects when that age-appropriate developmental need, okay, for her to have had it early on, had been traumatically thwarted early on, even if inadvertently, by an impinging and therefore annihilating maternal environment. More specifically, this case speaks to the transformative power of revisiting, in this case, playfully, the maturational stage of absolute dependence in order to correct for early on traumatic frustration of the child's healthy developmental need to be met. I worked with Amy weekly for 2 years from her ages 7 to 9. Mother had originally brought her in because Amy had become a serious behavior problem at the age of 7 here in school and was now also getting bad grades. Mother reported that Amy had always been a very sad little girl, but had never been willing or able to talk to anybody about what was really going on inside her. Amy didn't have any friends and mostly played by herself in her room. Mother had taken Amy to see a number of different therapists over the course of the previous 3 years, ages 4 to 7, but Amy had refused to talk to all of them. Mother, who was admittedly a bit over-controlling, but otherwise a wonderful, wonderful, lovely woman, was nonetheless very well-intentioned and in a tremendous amount of pain because she was feeling so completely shut out of her daughter's world. And in addition to her daughter's depression and sadness, now the problematic behaviors in school and the bad grades, in the face of which Mother felt completely overwhelmed and helpless. A colleague of mine saw Mother. I saw Amy. Every week in our therapy sessions, Amy would have us play school. She was the teacher and I was her student. Actually, it seemed to me that she was a rather strict teacher, but then she seemed to feel that I was a rather naughty student. In truth, Amy was quite a stern taskmaster, quite a tough disciplinarian, and I might add, not always very nice about it. Believe me, I did the best that I could to be very good, to respond as best I could to each and every one of her many commands. But she was relentless and quite punitive. Sometimes Amy would demand that I sit at the little school desk that I had in my office, a tiny little thing into which I could barely fit at all. But whenever I would complain about how small the desk was, she would tell me that it only seemed that way because I was so fat and that I should be quiet. Periodically, she would tell me to stand up, and as soon as I'd struggled out of the little desk to my feet, she would insist that I be promptly seated. Up and down, again and again, again. Amy would tell me that my posture needed improvement and that I needed to stand up straighter so that I would look taller. If I didn't react quickly enough, Amy would send me to the corner of the room where I was to stand by myself in order to think about how bad I had been. Or if she was mad at me because she thought that I had been misbehaving and needed to be punished, she would get particular pleasure from making me go to the blackboard where I was to write over and over again, "I have been very bad. I have been very bad." And then I was to sign it. So I would write that again and again on the doggone blackboard, although I kept telling her that I didn't like the chalk or the blackboard. But she would tell me that that didn't matter and that I had to keep doing it anyway. So I would make a face while I was doing it. which I know she saw. Amy would give me homework assignments that I was to do between sessions. Of course, I would do them, but she would always give me a bad grade on them, even when I'd gotten all the answers right. When I would complain and ask her why my grade was so bad, she would tell me that it was because I was so dumb. Oh, Amy was a tough little tyrant. Believe me, I never once challenged her authority, and I always did the very best that I could to accommodate myself to every single one of her imperious commands. Amy just loved bossing me around, and as it happens, I didn't really mind either, except for the part about the chalk and the blackboard. Interestingly, she never once asked me to do something that I really wouldn't have been able to do. In other words, she never once put me in the untenable position of having to say no to her. So, over the course of our 2 years together, I did basically everything she demanded that I do. I offered her no resistance, and nor did I interpret her need to be in omnipotent control. I did not, for example, suggest that perhaps that need to be in omnipotent control over me was compensatory for underlying feelings of powerlessness and inadequacy in relation to her somewhat domineering mother. Indeed, I wanted Amy to have the experience of being able to exercise complete control over her surrounds, an experience that I sensed she had been denied as an infant and was now being denied as a latency age girl in the relationship with her well-intentioned but anxiously over-controlling mother. Meanwhile, I was beginning to hear from Mother's therapist that Amy was behaving much better in school and was no longer engaging in the negative attention-getting behaviors that had originally brought her to treatment. Amy was also beginning to talk to her mother and now had a few friends. And Mother reported that Amy didn't seem to be so sad anymore. Simultaneously, there came a time in our own work when my little friend appeared to need less and less for me to accommodate myself to her every need. And as she developed confidence in her ability to control her world, she no longer had the same need to be constantly demonstrating this power in relation to me, and was indeed gradually abrogating, Winnicott's word, some of her defensive omnipotence. In our sessions, Amy became less tyrannical, less bossy, less controlling, more vulnerable, more accessible, softer, gentler, more tender. And sometimes to reward me when she thought that I'd been particularly obedient, or when she was especially pleased with my progress, as she called it, she would give me a little pat on my back. Over time, she even told me that something I had done was very good. Amy also started to give me A's on my homework assignments. And sometimes she would even give me a little star for my homework because I'd done it so neatly. Lovely, shiny gold stars that she would bring in from home for me. And then one day, Amy brought in her own report card for me to see. Without a word, but with a big, happy, triumphant smile, she proudly presented it to me. And it had all A's on it. My little friend and I, we certainly did other things over the course of our 2 years together, including a little bit of interpretive work. I just kind of put that in there. Actually, we really didn't. Truth be told, we didn't really do any, but whatever. But I believe that what was most healing for her was my non-demanding, non-intrusive, non-controlling stance and my willingness to provide her with consistent gratification of her need for omnipotent control of her environment, a developmental ego need that had been traumatically thwarted early on, thereby prompting her psychic retreat and schizoid withdrawal from the world. Oops, wait a minute. Okay. At the end of the day, I believe, let's see. Yep. I believe that what was transformative for Amy was my ability to create a safe space into which she could deliver what most needed to be delivered, namely her need to be able to feel in control so that she would be able to risk becoming absolutely dependent on me a stand-in for her mother, without the fear of a catastrophically annihilating response that would once again shatter her vulnerable heart. Okay. More generally, I conceive of the therapeutic action in Model 4 as involving the co-creation, over time from my somewhat traditional training decades ago at the Boston Psychoanalytic Institute, where everything was one person, intra-psychic, then gradually sort of in the 80s, sort of like, well, maybe a little self-psychology and 1.5 person. So the person of the patient, and then the best part, the most empathic part of the therapist, 1.5 person. And then in the 90s, sort of 2 part. But basically, I've come over time to appreciate that basically everything is co-constructed, co-created. And everything has an upside and a downside. I think as I've matured and I've evolved and gotten older and wiser, you want there to be some advantage to getting older. You get a little wiser, but whatever. Is I do understand the co-creation, co-construction of meaning of everything. Model 4 is involving the co-creation of a transitional space between patient and therapist, created in part by the patient and her defensive need, but it's okay, to be in total control. She needs to be able to have that opportunity to regress, to redo, and in part by the therapist and her adaptive capacity to delight in being controlled. A co-constructed potential space into which the patient, who had emotionally shut down as a result of having had her heart shattered early on, can begin to deliver the parts of herself that are most vulnerable, most fragile, and most prone to breakage. And can then gradually discover, to her utter surprise and absolute delight, that her therapist will be so unfalteringly reliable, intuitively sensitive, gently attuned, lovingly present, and tenderly devoted to her care, that she need no longer worry quite so much about having her heart once again shattered. You might wonder, by the way, where's the optimal stress? Well, certainly in the facilitation statements, which I'm going to give a few more examples of a little later, but also in sort of having them creating a space that they feel they can come to every week. Although there may be times when they need to make it every other week, or if they've been coming 2 or 3 times a week, when they need to cut back on the frequency. For them, the optimal stress is even just in being there. That's the optimal stress. And if they're not there, of course, we can't do our work. So we kind of do need them there. Anyway, in essence, the therapeutic action in Model 4 involves giving the patient an opportunity to regress. That's not as relevant. It's not as much the focus in Model 1. The interpretive perspective, classical psychoanalysis. Model 2, corrective provision in self-psychology. Model 3, the intersubjective perspective of contemporary relational, where it's a lot about negotiating at Darlene Ehrenberg's intimate edge, the projective identifications that are being compulsively and unwittingly reenacted, and in which the therapist will participate if all goes well, mutual enactment, et cetera, et cetera. And in Model 5, that's not specifically the focus. It's more embodied in Model 5. But in Model 4, there's regression to redo, giving the patient an opportunity to regress to the stage of absolute dependence, but with a different, much better outcome this time. Existential ontological dependence, which means absolute reliance upon another for one's very existence, one's very identity. In other words, the challenge for the Model 4 patient lies in, first of all, getting themselves into the room, and then ultimately in overcoming their dread of surrender to absolute existential dependence on the therapist. An experience that can hopefully then be broadened to encompass others as well. Now, my eyes on the time here. Michael Ballant, that's a nice slide, but let's move on. Although he does talk, as I mentioned earlier, about creating a harmonious, interpenetrating mix-up, the basic fault because of failure in the early on environmental provision. Christopher Bolus writes about ordinary regression to dependence, a regression that can be arrested by the therapist interpretive activity, but fostered by the therapist's openness and receptivity and non-defensiveness. So whether it's Winnicott's regression to absolute dependence, Balin's benign regression in the service of the ego and in the service of the treatment, or Bolas's ordinary regression to dependence, basically, we're talking about Model 4 creating an opportunity by way of the therapist's provision of a facilitating holding environment by way of the therapist being a devoted mother or parent with a primary maternal or parental preoccupation that Winnicott talks about, such that there can be moments of joyful meeting, harmonious interpenetrating mix-up, and blissful, peaceful merger, an opportunity to regress in order to redo. And when this happens, in those moments when this can happen, and meanwhile, there's other stuff going on, but in there, those moments where there's the emergence of Ofra Eschel's analytic oneness or harmonious interpenetrating mix-up, it is just delicious, certainly for the therapist, and by then, often for the patient as well. It's really quite incredible. Okay, here we go. I'm here reminded of Keith Urban and Carrie Underwood's beautiful duet called The Fighter, in which a woman, here representing the Model 4 patient, whose precious heart had been broken at an earlier time in her life, keeps asking for and needing reassurance that were she to fall, were she to cry, were she to be scared, her man, here representing the Model 4 therapist, would be there to catch her and to hold her tight. So if you've ever seen this with Carrie Underwood and Keith Urban singing this duet, like, oh my God. All right, so the chorus of the song goes as follows. What if I fall? I won't let you fall. What if I cry? I'll never make you cry. And if I get scared, I'll hold you closer. No, I'll hold you tighter. Sorry. I'll hold you tighter. When they're trying to get to you, baby, I'll be the fighter. And that's, of course, Keith Urban singing that to Carrie Underwood. But what if I fall? Oh, I won't let you fall. What if I cry? I promise I'll never make you cry. And if I get scared, I'll hold you tighter. When they're trying to get to you, baby, I'll be the fighter. All right, gun trips, schizoid withdrawal. Okay, well, gun trip, I mean, you have to kind of mention gun trip, schizoid withdrawal, emotional detachment. The innermost self of the schizoid has secretly withdrawn and retreated to an objectless world. And the difference between gun trip and Fairbairn is that inside of Fairbairn's patients, they, even though Fairbairn's titles of books have the word schizoid in them, there is a world that's populated with all sorts of objects. And the burden of the parents' badness is interjected. And so Fairbairn's internal world is filled with charged, toxic, which I see as being at the heart of sadomasochistic relatedness to objects. But Gun Trip, his internal world, I think of him as the sad man. You know, he had an analysis with both Fairbairn and then with Winnicott, with both of them. But he was still the sad man. Still the sad man. The schizoid, yes, inside the innermost self of the schizoid has secretly withdrawn and retreated to an objectless world. It is simply too painful even to hope for something different. The schizoid attempts to cancel relationships, to want no one, and to make no demands. On the one hand, I'm sorry. On the one hand, on the other hand, I'm sorry. She desperately, sorry. I'm leaping way ahead, aren't I? On the one hand, she desperately needs objects, but is terrified that she'll be destroyed. On the other hand, she desperately needs her solitude, but is terrified that she will then disappear. The net result of which is relentless despair, emotional deadness, and profound hopelessness. So okay, here are a few facilitation statements, and then I want to give you an extended vignette. Okay. A part of you would wish that you could find something that would make your life feel more meaningful. But another part of you fears that it is simply not in the cards for you ever to be able to find any real pleasure in life or any real joy in relationships. You don't just say that whenever, you say it when it feels like the moment is appropriate. A part of you longs to find a soulmate with whom you would be able to share what most matters to you and with whom you could then spend the rest of your life. Now, how will that make the patient feel? That's a bit of a challenge, probably anxiety provoking, increase their anxiety. And I know, oh, by the way, I do run, and I can mention this, even though this is a CE offering, and entirely free on Thursdays, every Thursday, 2 hour, both live and recorded for later viewing on my private YouTube channel. I offer a spot supervision Zoom session, 2 hours every single Thursday. And a case is presented to me. And I got so distracted by thinking about that. It's one of the things that I totally enjoy doing in my life. And well, I don't know why I mentioned it, except probably it was on my mind. I just wanted to get it said. So apropos of nothing, I guess I just mentioned that. Another part of fears is simply not in the cards. Well, okay, it'll come to me. Part of you longs to find a soulmate, whatever. A part of you, third one, very much wants to get better and recognizes that coming in every week probably gives you the best chance of making that happen. But another part of you is exhausted and discouraged and not at all sure that you have it in you to keep trying. Oh, can you feel that? Part of it will be anxiety-provoking challenge. Makes them anxious. Oh, I know, in the group, yeah, the spot supervision. Sometimes a case is presented, and the presenter, the therapist, the clinician will say, I want to be careful, though. I'm afraid that if I say that, I'll make the patient anxious. And I'm sort of thinking, yeah, optimal anxiety, optimal stress. It's that there that will create the impetus and therefore the opportunity for there to be a destabilization of the otherwise entrenched stance that the patient has. So we do want to offer an anxiety-provoking challenge, in reaction to which there will be a little bit of a sort of destabilization, but along with an anxiety assuaging support that will allow for an adaptive reconsolidation or reconstitution at a slightly higher level of adaptation, growth, and transformation. So again, to get from defense to adaptation, from psychological rigidity to psychological flexibility or resilience in all 5 of my models, and I think in all healing, deep embodied healing treatments, you really need to go through these healing cycles: disruption, repair, disruption, repair, disruption, repair. I'm sure that's a very familiar concept to all of you, and you may think of it with slightly different words, but basically, yeah, 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 yeah. So yes, for them to be anxious first, maybe, and then supported. Less anxiety, and then anxious, and then supported, and and so on. That's the healing process for deep embodied change. Now, there are times when, quite frankly, for a mix of reasons, you just do support, support, support. That's okay too, but that's not really about sort of destabilizing. It's not about therapeutic memory reconsolidation, which fundamentally I think is at the heart of deep embodied change. But it's nice, and patients can feel deeply supported and held. But then they'll say, I feel so good here, but then I go home and I've lost it. And so that's something that's sort of called specific adaptation to imposed demand. So they, in the treatment, they got it okay. And then they go out into the world, out in the wild, and sort of like, oh, it's gone. So, all right. Anyway, that was in favor. That was, I was speaking up on behalf of optimally stressful, growth incentivizing mismatch experiences between anxiety provoking challenge and anxiety assuaging support. Okay. Just email me if you want to be in my entirely free spot supervision Zoom sessions, and the email's in the chat. Okay. All right. That's good. You kind of knew that already. Okay, Thomas. Okay, here we go. My eyes on the time. Okay. I'm trying, like, well, back in the day when I used to do dairy, I don't do that anymore, but you have an ice cream cone and you have ice cream in it. It's a real challenge. You lick the ice cream and so on, a little bit the cone, and, sugar cones are the best and so on. And you want the very last bite to have a little bit of ice cream as well as the cone itself. So I've been trying to make that happen here. So let's see if let me see if I can get this done here. Okay, so I think so, almost. I think so. Okay. I present now an extended, wait a minute. Okay, I present now an extended clinical vignette that I have entitled Thomas, a beautiful story about his intense yearning for one more dance with his father. I think it captures beautifully the essence of all that we have been addressing to this point. I worked with Thomas for 6 years, from 2000 to 2006. By the time Thomas had terminated, he was no longer a dissociated, alienated, lonely, frightened, Model 4, control freak. his words. When I go like this, it's his words, control freak, but a wonderfully engaged man who was living his life in an authentic and heartfelt way. When first he came to me, Thomas was 24, a tall, lean, prematurely white haired, handsome, bespectacled man, a college dropout who had nonetheless managed, by dint of his hard work, to become the owner of a fairly successful restaurant in Brookline, Massachusetts. He presented with an agitated depression, reporting that his personal life had become a total mess because of some really bad choices that he had made along the way. Thomas said he was desperate and needed my help in figuring out what he should do to straighten out his life. Thomas was in a painfully empty marriage to Sandra, whom he had known since high school, and with whom he had had 2 children, Bill and Dan. He was having a passionate affair with a wonderful woman named Molly, whom he considered his soulmate. He was dating Donna on the side because he was afraid to commit to Molly, and he was still sexually involved from time to time with Doris, a former girlfriend, because he couldn't bring himself to break things off with her. And he was the father of an illegitimate child by Jane, a one-night stand some years earlier that had produced a little girl named Autumn, whom Thomas had been allowed to see only a few times. Thomas, who loved music, was a songwriter and played guitar. Who loved music, was a songwriter and played guitar, would say to me with a slight self-deprecating twinkle in his eye, there should be songs written about having 4 women, but I guess who would be interested in such songs? Sometimes when Thomas was feeling especially bad about his roaming eye, as he called it, he would practice not being attracted to other women. But he was never able to sustain his abstinence for long because he was so terrified of being alone. In the meantime, he lived by the rule, never get so close that it hurts when they leave. Thomas was racked with guilt about everything. He managed his complicated life and what he called his moral badness and sinful existence by engaging in numbers of compulsive rituals and routines, by keeping himself always at a remove from too much involvement in life, and by maintaining rigid, robotic-like control at all times. He was a clean freak who took 4 showers a day, carefully wiped down the engine in his car every week, and washed the outside of his house 3 times a year. Disciplined, structured, regimented, controlled constructs he lived by. He loved orderedness, symmetry, balance, organization. I mean, I kind of love those also, by the way. You may notice as we as we go through the slides. One of Thomas's rituals centered around managing the delicate strings that he experienced as being attached to his back. He knew they weren't really there, but their imagined presence and their tendency to become entangled troubled him deeply even so. Way in advance of his appointment time, Thomas would drive to my office, carefully get out of his car so that the strings wouldn't get tangled, walk up my driveway using the same number of steps every time, come around to the back of my house, and enter the sun porch waiting room. Once inside, however, things would get a little more complicated. He had explained to me that it was easiest for him simply to remain standing quietly at attention inside the sun porch door, instead of attempting to sit, because in turning his body to take a seat, he might create an intolerably anxiety-provoking entangling of the strings. Upon entering my office, he would carefully take a seat, knowing that at the end of the hour, he would then need to undo that process by reversing the order of the actions that had brought him to that spot. Very carefully, therefore, Thomas would back out of my office, out of my waiting room, down the driveway, the same number of steps down the driveway as steps up, and back into his car without having messed up the strings. Thomas was a graceful man with a soft elegance, so he was able to manage all of this with such finesse that unless you watched him closely, you might never notice. Thomas's goal in life at that early stage in our treatment was to keep his path as uncomplicated as possible so that he would be able to avoid the potential for entanglement of the strings and thereby a shortening of his life. He recognized the irony in this, that he, whose life had been immeasurably complicated by virtue of the many bad choices he had made along the way, would be now so intent upon simplifying things. But Thomas was very worried about inadvertently shortening his life and desperately afraid of dying. Were the strings to become entangled and their length thereby shortened, well, the thought of that was terrifying for him and an all too poignant reminder of the finitude of life, the terrifying passage of time, and the inevitable end. He was tormented by thoughts of his own mortality and the knowing that nothing would last, nothing was permanent. Thomas would tell me, I've always thought that you should not think about things that bother you. You should pretend the problems are not there. If you need to, you can have scheduled unhappiness, whereby you designate a certain period of time to think about how unhappy you are. But then it is important to move on. End quote. In a desperate attempt to ease his pain, Thomas had been drinking alcoholically for over 12 years. Started like when he was like 12. Although shortly into his treatment, he stopped drinking on a dime when I happened to suggest, as a throwaway comment, that the drinking might be contributing to his agitation and his depression. Not surprisingly, Thomas, for whom being in control was a top priority, wanted always to be in control of our sessions and of what he talked about, which was totally fine with me. And so the process between us unfolded gradually, organically, with Thomas always leading the way. In our sessions, he would share details about his life, speaking always in his reporter mode. Between our sessions, he would often leave me messages on my voicemail in which he would report in with details about his week. It's Thomas reporting in, he would always say. Whether in session or between sessions, never the feelings, simply the facts. Again, all of this was just fine with me. Meanwhile, I was becoming extremely fond of this dear man whose vulnerable, tormented soul was so racked with guilt, sadness, shame, and pain. Thomas's father had been a very successful dentist, universally liked and admired, but he was a demanding father with very high standards. He was very exacting, said Thomas. Good for the teeth, but not for the son. His mother, an actuary, was a good woman, but with more head than heart. Both parents were often absent, physically and emotionally. Early on in our work, Thomas said very little about them other than that he had loved them and they had loved him, and he rarely spoke about his early years. There did come a time in our work, however, when Thomas began to talk about a dear childhood friend. I'm so sorry. I know you're wondering. I'm sorry. I know you might be wondering why I keep looking down. Um, there's a radiant heater under here, and I'm about to burn my foot off. And we wouldn't want that. All right, but I think we're good now. And then it gets too hot, and then I'm really going to burn my leg off, but then we go back. All right. So anyway, it's cold up here in Cambridge. What can I say? All right. Okay. And a shout out to Kathy. Hi, Kathy. All right. So let's see. Okay, Thomas. Okay. Oh, okay. There did come a time in our work, however, when Thomas began to talk about a dear childhood friend, Bobby, with whom he had been very close and whom he had deeply cherished. He and Bobby had lived next door to each other for many years and would play together for hours on end, make-believe games in which both would have superhuman powers and no vulnerabilities, and they would live forever. Thomas had loved Bobby dearly and was devastated when, with neither advance notice nor explanation, Bobby and his family had suddenly left town when he and Bobby were both 9. They had never even had a chance to say goodbye. Thomas, dissociated but clearly in pain, reported to me that he had never fully recovered from his grief about the loss of Bobby, that some part of him had died the day he found out Bobby was simply gone. As he recounted the details of their very special relationship, and then Bobby's sudden, incomprehensible, and devastating departure, Thomas shed no tears. Rather, it was I who began to tear up as Thomas spoke of his heartbreak. Thomas witnessed my tears, but made no mention of them, nor did I. But to the next session he came, bearing a poem that he had written over the course of the week in honor of his deep friendship with Bobby. It was entitled Sometimes Sad, Forever. When you and I were young, we were forever. We were in control, and anything, everything was possible. Our lives were as one, though not really. I was you, though never quite, always simply wanting to be. But then you slipped away, unscheduled, forever, leaving me behind with this sadness, this pain, this loneliness that never lets up, ever. My dreams came crashing down around me through a frightened void, shattered, splinters flying, like an abandoned jigsaw puzzle, pieces missing, like my life. I love you, Bobby, forever and for always, but you are gone from me. Where did you go? I am lost and so desperately lonely without you. Again and again, Thomas would ask, Thomas would ask rhetorically, why would you want to love someone if they're going to leave you anyway? Thomas had been an only child until he was 11, at which time his younger sister was born. He reported, I was mean to her because I always thought that she was smarter than I was. She was a weird eater, 5'6" eventually, and 100 pounds. I didn't like her that much, but I was afraid she might die on me because she was so skinny. His sister hadn't died, but when Thomas was 21, his father had a horrific death from cancer of the head of the pancreas. Thomas reported, excuse me, I felt responsible for his death. When I was young, I had been my dad's pride and joy. But in high school, I began to live irresponsibly, drinking, drugging, lots of sex. I knew I was letting my dad down. I think he had wanted me to be a dentist, just like him. I was good with my hands and probably would have made a good dentist. But in my late teens, I wasn't caring much about stuff. I was just living on the edge, indulgently, destructively, and drinking a lot. I got the girl pregnant and then headed off to Europe for a year or two. I was running away from everything. It was only after returning from Europe that Thomas had finally told his father about his illegitimate daughter, Autumn. Father had been devastated and had said that he was not yet ready to meet her. This was the first, last, and only time they had spoken of Autumn. But Thomas could not forgive himself for having given birth to this child out of wedlock in the first place, and then for having burdened his father with the knowledge of it. My dad never asked me what was wrong with me or why my life was such a mess. We never talked about things like that. One day, however, just before my 21st birthday, totally unexpectedly, my dad invited me to have lunch with him, which wasn't something he had ever done before. But we never had that lunch. He suddenly got very sick and was diagnosed with bad cancer. I've always wondered what he would have wanted to talk to me about. In my life, there is part one, the time before my dad got sick. Then there is part two, the time after my dad got sick. Later, Thomas reported, my dad was so disappointed in me. I know I let him down terribly. I think I broke his heart. I wasn't the son he had wanted me to be. He had the cancer, but I think he died from a broken heart. As Thomas talked about his unresolved grief and tormenting heartache, his pain was palpable, but never any tears. In fact, as an adult, he had never shed any tears except during sad movies. But, as was often the case, when he, ever the reporter, would speak of his pain, his internal turmoil, his racking guilt, his sadness, his heartbreak, his anguish, his loneliness, it was I who would be crying. And it happened a lot. Seeing my tears, Thomas would reach out for the box of Kleenex beside his chair and hand it to me. I kept the box of Kleenex beside the patient chair and not my own because with most of my patients, I myself didn't really need it. As I cried, Thomas would sit very still, patiently, gently, tenderly, until I had composed myself and my tears had passed. And then he would continue. Again, we never talked about my tears or what they might mean to him, or to me for that matter, to him or to me for that matter. It's just what we did together. He would speak of his heartbreak and I would cry. And I loved it that he, ever attuned to my face, would offer me that Kleenex. One particularly poignant moment was when Thomas was telling me about how he would regularly visit his father's gravesite, even though some years later, where he would talk for hours and hours on end, softly, lovingly, apologetically, to his dad about his daughter Autumn and his regret and his guilt and his shame and all the things he wished he'd been able to talk to his dad about in the living years. Thomas would leave at the tombstone a special bouquet of carefully selected flowers for his dad because he knew how much his dad loved flowers and gardens and interest they had shared. As Thomas talked about one of the visits to his father's gravesite, I found myself crying so much, I was sobbing actually, that Thomas had to stop talking for quite a bit. Once my tears began to subside, Thomas asked me gently if it was okay for him to continue. I said, I need another moment, please. So he sweetly waited. Again, Thomas and I never talked about my tears or his lack of them. It worked for us both. Thomas was intrigued when one day I suggested to him that grieving on your own is very inefficient, but sharing the grief with someone else will make it so much more efficient. He responded, okay. You know, I had never really understood how you could complete something with someone who was already dead. Once you die, you're dead, like a rock. Maybe I could, share the grief with you. Shortly thereafter, Thomas brought me another poem, which he had just written. It was entitled A Song to My Dad. Dad, I'm writing you this letter, pretending you'll get to know its contents. But when I imagine your eyes, dried like raisins, left lonely in their sockets, I feel the futility of it all. Writing a letter that you will never read. Another exercise in self-indulgence, just time wasted. The last time I wrote to you, when I was 10, or was I finishing high school? I guess it doesn't really matter. The mandatory letters, meaningless anyway. Now, as I prepare to let you in, it is too late. 7 years or so too late. When we were told that you would be dying soon, I climbed, shaking, the stairs to visit you in the hospital, my guts retching. I, always so good with words, shrieking inside, fuck you, God. And there you lay, rotting on the Bullfinch ward at the Mass General, a lobby for the almost dead. I wonder if you were to sit here with me, if I could make you know how much I love you and how much I miss you and how sorry I feel. I wonder if I screamed it in your face, as I have so many times at the Linwood Cemetery, if you could ever know how much I ache for you. I need you to tell me you love me in spite of it all. I need you to lie to me if necessary. That would be okay. Then you could hug me like you used to when I was very small and not yet a disappointment and you weren't dead, or like you would have if I had let you, or like we did that time in the garden after we made it so beautiful and full of life, or as I should have when you became empty, your life freshly ripped from its turncoat cocoon by the bad cancer that would not relent. You were dead. You were dead too soon. You are dead forever. It feels very empty in here. I was told that after the mourning period, things would feel better, but my mourning period is lasting forever, it seems, a just punishment. I have fathered some children you would love. They would love you. They would want to spend some of their lives with you. You could hug them whenever you wanted. I could watch with pride, even as I would be filled with envious longing, hoping no one would see the pain of the heartbreak I was feeling, or the regret about all the opportunities for you and me that I had let slip through my fingers. I've done a lot of disappointing since you left. I can't seem to shake it. I can't ever be you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to kill you. I love you, Thomas. One day, Thomas, who had always come on time for every single one of his sessions, in fact, sometimes up to 30 minutes early, Thomas came 5 minutes late, having been stuck in terrible traffic, and was totally distraught. To complicate matters, he was concerned that in his haste, the strings attached to his back might have become entangled. Time, of course, every single moment was so very precious to him. Ordinarily, I would not make up the time for a late patient, but with Thomas, I wanted to. And so I told him that I would like to make up those 5 minutes for him at the end of our session. He was able to let me know that it meant the world to him that I would be willing to do this. And I believe it marked one of several turning points in the treatment. For reasons never entirely clear to either of us, after I gave him those 5 minutes back, Thomas found himself becoming less and less concerned about the strings and their potential entanglement. In fact, he kind of forgot about the strings altogether, much as a young child one day simply lets go of his tattered blankie. Over the course of our 6 years together, Thomas turned his life around. As he and I grieved the loss of Bobby and later the loss of his dad, his heart began to heal. And he became more engaged in life, more invested in life, less afraid, more grounded, less terrified of dying, more present, less frantic about the passage of time, more committed to living right and well and authentically in the moment and with passion. Sometime before the end of our work together, Thomas had divorced his wife, had stopped seeing the other girlfriend, and had called things off with his sometime lover. Meanwhile, he and Molly were getting very serious and building a gorgeous house on a lake, the outside of which Thomas was not planning to wash. One very special day, as a thank you gift, Thomas proudly presented me with a beautiful photograph of his family at their new waterfront home, all of them happily relaxing on their deck overlooking the lake. The photograph included Molly, his two sons by Sandra, Autumn, who, much to Thomas and Molly's delight, now considered their home to be her home, and Thomas, grinning from ear to ear. Thomas said that it was because of our work together that he was now able to smile. I was incredibly touched. More tears, mine, of course. Throughout our time together, Thomas had never once shed a tear, but that was fine. Thomas told me that one of the most comforting things I had ever told him was when I had shared with him the idea. So I will be running over a little bit. I hope that's okay. Thank you. All right. Thomas told me that one of the most comforting things I'd ever told him was when I had shared with him the idea that if you were blessed enough to be in a mutually loving relationship, then inevitably, either you would end up losing that person, whether to death or to something else, or that person would end up losing you. And that's just the way it was, an excruciatingly painful and sobering existential reality with whom all of us must eventually make our peace. Thomas said that my sharing this fundamental truth with him had been clarifying and tremendously reassuring. It had helped him to feel less frightened, more grounded, and less alone. And then it was time for us to say goodbye, and we were ready for it, sad as it was for us both. To one of our last sessions, Thomas brought his guitar and played for me Luther Vandross's heart-wrenching song entitled Dance with My Father, about a young boy's you're aching to be able to dance just one more time with his dearly beloved but long departed father. I never danced that he would be gone. Excuse me. I never dreamed that he would be gone from me. But if I could steal one final glance, one final step, one final dance with him, I'd play a song that would never, ever end, because I'd love, love, love to dance with my father again. Every night I fall asleep, and this is all I ever dream. I would like now to share with you what happened in the final moments of our final session. At the very end, when Thomas stood up to leave for the last time, no longer worried at all about any strings attached, I, with access to lots of tissues, reached out my hand to take a hold of his. He immediately reached for my hand, and I then placed my second hand around his. Then, after only a moment's hesitation, he slowly raised his second hand to his face, and as I followed the movement of his arm, I could see that he was pointing to the tears that were welling up in his eyes and beginning to roll down his cheeks. He smiled sweetly at me through his tears, and I, through my own, smiled back. A very special, tender moment that needed nothing more. Thomas has stayed in touch over the years and periodically comes in for a touch base session. He and Molly ended up going into business together and now run a chain of very successful high-end restaurants. As Thomas, with a twinkle in his eye, recently observed, when first he had come to me, he had 4 women and 1 restaurant. Now he has 1 woman, 1 woman and 4 restaurants. We agreed that although you probably wouldn't want to be writing a song about having 4 women, you could probably write a pretty interesting one about having 4 restaurants. Thomas and Molly gave birth to 2 lovely girls, Christy and Samantha, and their beautiful lakefront house is now home to these girls, Thomas's 2 sons and Autumn. Thomas is supremely happy and tells me that his life is now filled with moments of intense joy and wonder. He is aging gracefully. He's no longer afraid. His heart has healed and he has found internal peace. He no longer has the loneliness, no longer feels alienated, no longer dissociates, and is no longer a reporter. And sometimes he cries when he feels like it. He still visits his dad's graveside, but he now feels that he carries his dad inside of him. That at the end of the day, he did kind of end up being a lot like his dad. Ever humble, Thomas tells me with quiet, heartfelt gratitude and pleasure that he knows his dad would be proud of him. And I personally am quite sure that Thomas is right about that. Thank you. And thank you for the responses of those whom I could see. I'm just about wrapping up here. Conclusion. Thank you. All right. So we will run over a little bit, and I've been given permission to do that. But I think those of you guys who want to leave on the dot can, and you still get your CE credits, be that as it may. Okay. Whether Donald Winnicott's regression to absolute dependence and recognizing and responding to the patient's healthy developmental needs, or Michael Balin's harmonious interpenetrating mix-up, benign regression to dependence, and achievement of a blissful state of peaceful merger, or Masood Khan's overcoming of dread and emotional surrender to resourceless dependence, or Ofra Eshel's emergence of analytic oneness. The therapeutic action in Model 4 will involve the co-creation of a synergistic and mystical space between. And I hope that in all those examples I gave, you sort of could feel that. Excuse me, a synergistic and mystical space between, containing interlocking aspects of both patient and therapist. In the evocative words of Laura Praglin, this transformative in between, as she calls it, is a meeting ground of potentiality and authenticity. Her words, located neither solely within the patient nor solely within the therapist, a space within which the patient's true self can at last be birthed. We had started with Kelly Clarkson's heartbreakingly poignant Because of You, and I conclude now with her hauntingly beautiful Piece by Piece, an incredibly vulnerable song, also written by Kelly, that speaks to the damage Kelly, a Model 4 patient, sustained as a young child when her father left and headed to the airport to start another life. Damage that is now being repaired by her lovingly devoted husband, here representing the Model 4 therapist, a dear man who has been healing her by putting back together the pieces of her shattered heart, one by one, piece by piece, filling the holes burned in her at 6 years old. Now, unfortunately, let me just say, she did then get a divorce. So there is that. However, I do believe, and what follows, I'm going to quote a little bit from her song. I do believe that being with him did help her tremendously in terms of putting the pieces back together. Okay. Autobiographically, Kelly Clarkson sings of her heartbreak. And all I remember is your back walking towards the airport, leaving us all in your past. I traveled 1,500 miles to see you, begged you to want me, but you didn't want me. But piece by piece, he, her beloved husband at the time, collected me up off the ground where you abandoned things. And piece by piece, he filled the holes that you burned in me at 6 years old. And no, he never walks away. My husband, he never asks for money. He takes care of me because he loves me. Piece by piece, he restored my faith that a man can be kind and a father could stay. Piece by piece, piece by piece, piece by piece. And we go to that piece by piece. Thank you. There we go. If you like, there's my email, there's whatever. And again, the PDFs are available by clicking on a link that's already been sent to you. And now I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to say hello.
Hi there.
Oh, hello there. So thank you. I know I ran over a little bit.
What do you
But
want to do now,
I
Martha?
would love to go to the chat if I could. So I'm going to open that up. I think I can do that. Oh, I can. Um, um, good. You can still see me. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Oh, thank you. Oh, I see that heart. Thank you so much. Okay, here we go. Uh, okay, I'll go through these quickly. Yes, there is my email address. Jonathan LeBolt, great point on Winnicott and work with false self, probably because of his personal. Oh, yeah, discomfort with aggression despite hate in the countertransference. Yes, Jonathan, totally. Oh, and thank you for that comment, for putting in the IARPP. Thank you, Jonathan. Yes, right. Isn't it true that don't we hear the story from Margaret Little? Right, she was his Analysand, one of them, and she'd gotten so angry. Forgive me if I don't have all of this right. But anyway, you have to know that I adore Winnicott, but be that as it may. Anyway, Margaret Little, so angry with her, smashes this incredible sort of antique vase that he had in his office. She was so enraged. And he apparently, she went back the next day. He never mentioned anything at all about it, not really able to handle her aggression or murderous rage particularly well. And he just replaced it with another one. And anyway, and there's some version, this one is really not quite right, but this is my distorted memory of it, that he had presented to the New York psychoanalytic. Again, only half of what I'm saying is correct, but I don't know which half is correct. But anyway, half. When I graduated from Harvard Medical School, we were told that, by the way, only half of what we'd been taught was right, but we weren't told which half, which half it was. That's why sometimes I just don't get things right. But be that as may, apparently the New York Psychoanalytic, so Winnicott presented his paper on the use of an object, right? One of his most famous papers. But apparently it did not go over very well at all. And he went back to his hotel room afterwards and I think had a heart attack. Now, a serious one. Now, I don't know if I have all of that right, but that's sort of the story. That's the way it goes. So anyway, Jonathan, thank you, and so on. Mindy, I'm sitting in and have camera stable. Okay, good. Beautiful, Karen. Oh, thank you. Okay, Professor Dr. Ava, the heir apparent to self-psychology. Dear Martha, oh, your true self is so touching and moving. Thank you so much for letting us participate. Oh, and your generosity. And we got a lot of thank yous on that one. Oh, man, Greenbaum, and some of you others. Oh, thank you. All right, Simon and Garfunkel made this poem into a song. Yeah, yeah, I know. I know. What is resources dependence? Yes, Winnicott's. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's Masood Khan. The same thing that absolute dependence, like feeling that you have nothing inside and nothing outside, nothing without resources of your own. And so needing to be able to regress to that earliest developmental stage where hopefully you'll be able to find someone who can provide resources. So that's that earliest stage. What is resources dependence? To but resources dependence. I mean, that's a good question though, actually, from absolute dependence, which is the same thing as resourceless though. From absolute dependence, where you are absolutely dependent, but if it's not forthcoming, then of course you will be up Schitt's Creek, kind of. All right, Jonathan, I would think about it as allowing a complete emotional dependence on the analyst, though nothing in life is completely complete. Yes, one of those sobering truths that we have to sort of make our peace with. Thank you, Jonathan. Like dependence without a safety net. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Jonathan, yes, but we do need safety nets and resources. Karen, you empowered her. Oh, thank you, Jonathan. A corrective emotional experience, which used to be a criticism of psychoanalysis, but I think it's good. Yes. So when Alexander and French in the 1940s introduced the concept, they unfortunately, in the way they talked about it, they suggested a little bit that it was a little more artificial than not. But quite frankly, they, as far as I'm concerned, had they not quite emphasized the artificial part of it, they were the beginning of talking about creating optimally stressful, growth incentivizing mismatch experiences between learned expectations, learned relational expectations, and new lived experience. And on some level, like admit it, we hear things from our patients. I mean, by definition, there are ways in which we're not entirely genuine. My God, we hear our patients saying things like when I would hear about my patient, who before he came my way, but he would rape women. I mean, my authentic response, you know, it's like, oh my God, that's horrible. But my therapeutic response, I contained myself and did a little more something. I didn't quite do that. So we just hear these things from our patients that we take in our stride. So it's not all about sort of like just let it all hang out and be totally authentic, but share certain things in a very heartfelt way for sure. And so that there will be ultimately, and model three, I mean, corrective emotional experience, right, on some level, corrective emotional relational experience is relevant for all five. That it's in the context of the relationship that there'll be the introduction of something new, whether it's new information, model one, whether it's a new experience of being able to grieve, model two, the new experience of having some charged toxic boluses of things ultimately contained, processed, and integrated, so that what goes back to the patient is a I'm copying off of Winnicott now, is a partially an amalgam, part the original projection, but now a partially processed and detoxified something that comes back, and serial, project. And the therapist is inducted into that, and then ultimately the therapist, with her own more evolved capacity, is able then to return to the patient something slightly detoxified. So serial dilution of the toxicity. So there too, it's a corrective relational whatever. In model four, certainly what we've been talking about is what we offer, where we invite them, we encourage them, we facilitate their regression to way back, and we provide for them in a way, we recognize and respond to their every need in a way that they never had the experience early on. And though it's a little controversial, but Winnicott talks about ego needs versus id needs. You'll notice I put in the word ego there a little bit. Ego needs must be met. Id needs, not so much. And the distinction I make between them is, if you gratify a patient's ego need, they're so grateful and it advances things. If you gratify their id need, you give them an inch, they take a mile, and then they want more, ever more, ever more. And that was probably an id need that probably you would have done better, optimally frustrating. Okay, anyway, but yes, correct emotional experience. Thank you, Jonathan. God, I love your comments, Jonathan. Please enable camera. Yeah, sorry, I know I had you kind of turn it off, and now you have to turn it back on. Roberta, wow, that is so inspiring, Martha. Would love to see you there. So glad you mentioned that. Oh, good. Yes, my spot supervisions. Oh, good. And I'm also teaching for a week live in Florida in February, in cold February. It won't be cold down there, though. Okay, Merle, what a wonderful, generous opportunity. Oh, thank you, Jonathan, again. Oh, thank you. Martha's spot supervision is brilliant. Oh, thank you, Charlotte from the UK. Hi, Charlotte. Thank you so much. I was involved with Charlotte years ago online. What spot supervision? Yes, on the spot, the case is presented, and in this setting, and it's recorded for later viewing on my private YouTube channel. And the presenter has a question or a concern of some sort, and then the therapist presenting and I have a dialogue back and forth, and then people put comments in the chat. So the whole last half hour, 45 minutes is, it actually ends up being 2 hours. The last half hour, 45 minutes is people with their comments, and the presenter and I sort of process those, because all the things we missed. And it's just wonderful. It's like sort of coming together. It's a global community. I just made up the word spot supervision. One day I decided, okay, I'm going to call it on the spot supervision. Of course, on the spot is me. I'm sort of on the spot because I have to provide the supervision, a case unknown to me. Oh, on the spot, said Jonathan. Oh, good. Okay, moving on here. Thank you. Oh, wow, so inspiring. Thank you. Wonderful, generous Martha, on the spot. I see with these facilitation statements that they offer the patient an opportunity to see there's a choice and they can take responsibility. That's very helpful. Yes, thank you, because it really is about choice and responsibility and freedom. The facilitation statements. Thank you, Roberta, for that. Thank you, Roberta. LOL, wow. Okay, good. I wish I could pronounce Karen. The Thursday meeting, yes, 12 to 2 Eastern Time, but again, recorded for later viewing. And a Thursday meeting, yes, Jonathan, okay. Ice cream, oh, yes, ice cream. Like, maybe after this, I'm going to indulge myself. We have some apple pie. I don't usually do sweets, but I feel like I want to indulge myself. So maybe a little apple pie. Maybe we'll go out, we'll get some vanilla ice cream, a little dollop of that. Uh, oh yeah, there is vegan ice cream. Thank you, Jonathan. Oh, what? Yeah, okay, then we'd get the vegan kind. Oh, a smiley there. Is there a reason video disabled by host? Okay, so sweet. You represented his vulnerable self. Hello, Donna Mahoney. Thank you, Donna. Thank you so much for being here. You're a teacher and do some wonderful teaching. I know that, and you're wonderful, period. You represented his vulnerable. Yes, the tears I think you're talking about. Well, somebody, or Robert. You know, I think you're talking about Thomas. Yes. Karen, wow. Oh, thank you. Love that song. Yes, breathwork. Truly wonderful programming, amazing case presentation, songs, poems, passion, compassion. I'm a published poet. Oh, Doris, wow. And so appreciated your creative therapeutic model. Oh, thank you, Doris. Okay, Roberta. So curious, Martha, if you encourage your patients to write or if they just do it on their own. If you do encourage, how and when do you decide to do that, or do you do it as a matter of how you practice always? Um, I love that question. Thank you. Well, first of all, let me just say, I have a cancellation policy that such that basically, if we're doing once a week, or if we're doing twice a week, or even 3 times a week, or every other week, that's what we do. In the event of an emergency, those do happen. If we can easily enough reschedule, find a mutually agreeable time within the week, that's good, and I'll do it. If we can't, they're still, as they know, financially responsible for the week. But what they could do if they want is to take the 45 minutes and sit down, I guess at their phone or their laptop or their computer, and type something to me for 45 minutes. And please, not too many typos, please. So that, and then I'll read that. And then in our next session, we'll discuss it. I would acknowledge it with a sentence. But so patience from that point of view, writing. Also, I take notes on my patients and obviously take notes. And I was taught never take notes. But then, I've not always done exactly everything I was taught. So I just take notes. And in fact, if anything, nobody's ever said that's a problem. In fact, if I don't take notes in a session, they say, "Why aren't you taking notes? Is it not interesting enough what I'm saying?" Anyway, and now I do most of the stuff by phone or maybe by Zoom. And oh, so my patients take notes, so they get used to. And some of my patients record their sessions. Anyway, I don't say to people, keep a journal or do writing, but somehow they know I love words, I love concepts, I love ideas. Some of them know about the Stark method of psychodynamic synergy, since nowadays online everybody knows everything about anybody anyway. And so, yeah, some of my patients probably do, but I don't specifically say, "Gee, why don't you write? Why don't you do artwork specifically?" Except sometimes. Okay, so moving on here. Amazing woman. Okay, good. Martha, oh, is a role model. Oh, Jonathan, it's rare for brilliant presenter to always show such passion, intensity, but particularly vulnerability and judicious self-disclosure. I need to leave, so I hope she reads this. I did, Jonathan. Thank you. Wonderful presentation. Thanks to Michael, the C committee. Yes, thank you all, and lots of thanks there. Susan Stein, love how much your humanity is such a part of your work. Very moving. Yeah, I hope this is. I hope this is inspiring for all of us to deliver our heart and our soul with passion into this incredible work we do. Let me just do something here. Okay. One of the most alive and evocative presentations I've attended. Thank you. Oh, Thomas. Oh, good, Charlotte. Thank you so much, Martha. Rich. Maybe some questions here. Amazing and all-encompassing presentation. I have to leave, but thank you very much. Oh, some nice hearts, open heart. I can wonderfully make any question. I was crying with you, Martha. Oh, said Anya. Oh, thank you. I think a few others were crying as well, I noticed. Thank you so much. Really moving. Infinite thanks. Thank you for your appreciation. Where's your email? Oh, Martha Stark, MD at synergymed.solutions. Again, it's in the PDFs. It's also in the chat, but I'll say it again. Martha Stark, MD, at synergy, SYNERGY, med, MED, dot solutions. There's no .com. Can't find email. Yeah, sorry. Oh, they can't find the email. So maybe the PDFs can be sent again. Or I can send you the PDFs if you send me an email. The email's at the top of the chat. Yeah, Dave said. Hello, Dave. Dave made all of this possible. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Maybe some questions. Please retype the email. It's not at the top. So maybe somebody did. Thank you, Dave. Retyped it. Bless you, bless you. There it is again. Thank you, Rachel. Thanks, Flora. Okay, any questions? Wonderful presentation. Oh, God, thank you. For you understand the work. Embracing despair and not trying to solely extinguish it. Some people, let me say, there are a few people when I've presented, not this, I've never presented this, but when I've talked about Model 4, some patients, some therapists just get really uptight and sort of, "God, it's awfully depressing and despair, and what do you mean, and nihilistic, this, that, whatever." And it's sort of like, not everybody has it. Oh, there's Kathy again. Hi, Kathy. Feel better. Anyway, not everybody goes to that place with their patients, and not all patients feel it. But one of the things in the spot supervisions that are presented to me is I will find that actually, if we do introduce the idea of despair and hopelessness, relentless, or finally a patient saying, well, now that you mention it, I've felt broken my entire lifetime. I felt broken irrevocably. All right, so any hands to be raised and so on. I'm available, quite frankly. Any hands to be raised to ask me a question would be just fine. And let me also, while you're thinking of a question and whatever, I'm looking at some of you people and just grateful and glad here. There's Marvin and Kayla, Daniel, Liz, and Joyce. Oh, it's so sweet to see you all here. Oh, wait, I think I saw someone. Madonna Klein, Barbara Kern. Okay, Karen. Okay, so now's your chance to ask a question. So don't all raise your hands at once. I'll be able to handle all of you.
I think we've lost quite a number of people, so the
But
crowd's dwindling a little bit.
oh, we got a question from Tara. Yes, but as long as we have some, we have 58 people, so that means we could have 58 questions. All right, so Tara, please. Yes.
Hi there. Thank you so much, Martha.
Hi, Tara.
This might be just something I've heard theoretically in the past, but how often or what do you think about in the process, in the iterative process you talked about of transformation and healing? Do you find people move to a more frequent than not different developmental phase, like move to model 4, 3, 2, 1 as their predominant presentations? Or do you see them as just developmentally pretty discrete in their presentations?
Um, I don't know if I'm answering your question directly, but let me try this. The five models. I see that usually, although it can change over the course of a treatment, there's an underlying something that they bring, and those letters will start with an N. Model 1, neurotic, internally conflicted and jammed up. Model 2, narcissistic. Although, again, for the most part, I don't really go with DSM stuff, whatever. That's not really so much my thing. But everybody wants to know, so well, diagnosis. So finally, I sort of got it. Okay, the N words. So model 1, neurotic. Model 2, narcissistic, fundamentally, but then I'm going to say another level. Model 2, narcissistic. Model 3, noxious, Noxious. It could have been contentious, but that starts with a C. So noxious relatedness, right? Character disordered, and the more extreme form being patients with borderline dynamics. So neurotic, narcissistic, noxious relatedness. So neurotic conflictedness, model 2, narcissistic woundedness, vulnerability, sometimes entitlement. Model 3, noxious relatedness and a tendency compulsively and unwittingly to reenact unmastered early on relational traumas at the intimate edge, Darlene Ehrenberg's. Okay, those are the N words. Model 4, non-relatedness, affective non-relatedness, Modell's concept, affective non-relatedness. They're just basically affectively non-related. Model 4, hidden, false self they present, true self hidden. Okay, so we got the ends, right? Neurotic, narcissistic, noxiously related, and non-related. Look at that. Look at that. And model 5, neural entrenchment. And that's where we bring in a little bit more of the body and more embodied little t traumas, big T traumas, neural entrenchment, and therapeutic memory reconsolidation in a very obvious way, quantum disentanglement statements. You'll have to come back another time to hear my model 5 stuff about therapeutic memory reconsolidation. So that's neural entrenchment. Patients who are just neurally entrenched. That's the N word. All right, now moment by moment, however, in the treatment where it's going to shift around in the moment. So that's more characterological, foundational. They come with that, Tara. But moment by moment, like in the moment, you might have said something that not go so well, and so protectively they retreat. So now we have the R words. Now let's do the R words. The R words have to do with the defense that gets mobilized in the moment. And so model one, resistance. Guess what? Classical psychoanalysis does talk about resistance. So they become resistant, like you offer them something, and so on, and they find it resistant in the moment. Even though they may be fundamentally narcissistic or fundamentally noxiously related, you've tried to offer something, and they're a little more model one resistant. Okay, model two, they're talking about and either in relation to you or to contemporary objects on the outside or to the infantile objects, relentless hope, our word, the defense, where they're just ever busy wishing and hoping and praying. You know who sang that song? Wishing and hoping and praying. If you're long in the tooth, you're going to know who that is. Okay, Dusty Springfield. A few of you might have known. Yeah, we're all new. We're all new. All right. So, the relentless hope, if in the moment. So they'll be talking about how they just wish their boss would appreciate. They just wish their mother, they wish their child, they wish their partner would come on time and not be late. Meanwhile, fundamentally, they're one of the ends. So that's an R, relentless hope. Now, model three, they're reenacting, compulsively and unwittingly reenacting either with you or with people on the outside. And they're just ever busy, noxious relatedness, whatever. But in the moment, they're reenacting. We're thinking, hopefully, we'll be able to do some projective identification, negotiating at Darlene Ehrenberg's intimate edge. So that's reenacting. So that can happen anytime. That can happen. Or let me just say, there could be a story of the patient is actually feeling heartbreak and a lot of tears that they can't really quite yet fully let themselves take ownership of. And so the therapist, for example, finds herself crying, tears, crying. That's sort of an enactment that doesn't have the kind of toxic feel about it, but the patient not quite able to take ownership of, and the therapist being attuned enough allows herself, as I did, to be inducted into the system. And then ultimately, over the course of the 6 years, processing it in a way, periodically over the course of 6 years, giving back as part of the resolution, such that eventually at the very end, Thomas himself was able to take ownership of the tears. That's a model three mutual enactment where it doesn't quite have the same feeling of like toxic and bad and victimizer, victim and seducer, seducee. Okay, good. Model four, a person who's primarily maybe neurotic underlying, but you say something that's a bit off and they retreat. Well, no, I don't think it's that. And they retreat. That's retreat, relational absence. They're gone for the moment. It's more immediate. It's an acute reaction. And then motto, the fifth one, let's see, it has to be an R word, recalcitrant. What was the word I have? A recalcitrant works. I don't forgot the word. I forgot the R word. Let's see. There is an R word. Well, it'll come to me. It is my theory and so on. I have had the theory for 45 years, but I seem to have forgotten. Model 5 is the latest edition. It'll come to me eventually. So anyway, now Tara, did I a little bit answer your question?
Yes, I believe so. That even if there is an experience of a different developmental level or model, say if someone's foundationally in model 4, but you experience projective identification, it's not the same feel as if the core issue is in model 3.
Thank you. You have reminded me of two words that I did used to use and then lost track of: foundational and core. Right, those are the N words. Foundational and core. And that can change over time. Parenthetic, when I have patients who are kind of core, the narcissism model 2, and relentless hope, and they're ever busy wanting me to be somebody I'm not, and the people around them to be somebody they're not, and so on. Instead of saying to patients, sort of indicating in essence that they're narcissistic, I now, let's say the woman's or the man's name, but the woman's name, let's say, is Karen. I will say Karen centric. She's being, you're being Karen-centric again. And they're able to sort of, that's kind of a made up word. And it's not egocentric, it's not narcissistic. It's sort of like you're just out for yourself, but sort of like Karen-centric. So, and now my patients will say, oh, I'm probably being Karen-centric again. Meanwhile, they're fundamentally, though, some other N word. So does that, Tara, your question was wonderful and it helped me to get a little clearer about what I really mean. So thank
Yes.
you for
Thank
that.
you so much, Martha. Thank
Oh,
you.
my pleasure. Anybody else? If not, then I want to say, oh, can I just read this? Lisa said, I'm in awe of your patience with Emmy. I want to say something about that. Thank you. Without interpretation along the way, was that difficult, or do you just feel you're patiently joined with her in waiting during the trauma? I mean, let me just say, my dear sweet Gunner, who's my other half and has been for the last 50 years, would not entirely describe me as a very patient person. I'm quite sure of that, and nor would necessarily all of my patients. Um, but for me, I mean, I was having a wonderful time of it. I mean, I didn't I really, I mean, I said a few interpretations. I didn't really do any interpretations. I just sort of like, just like, I'll give you another little story that I like to tell. I'm sorry, I know my eyes on the time. People can just drop off, obviously, which is what you are doing. No problem. But I'll be done soon. One of the little kids that I was working with when I was doing my child psychiatry training, child fellowship at Mass Mental Health Center, was this very angry kid, an inpatient in the unit, a child unit, young kid. And he was assigned to me. Oh, there's Donna. He was assigned to me and sort of like, oh, damn it, because we knew he was trouble, 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 trouble. So anyway, so he would come into my office there at Mass Mental and he would walk into the office and he would say something like, suck my dick, and it's sort of like, oh, God. And I mean, I didn't interpret that. I mean, I just had to see this guy was assigned to him, whatever, whatever. But anyway, so over the course of my time with him, I had a plant. I don't have a green thumb, but I had a plant in my office, and it's called a purple passion, if you know what that is, very velvety and sort of purple and green and whatever. And during our time, sometime, we do different things and we play games. And when he tried to cheat, I said, you can't cheat. I give him an advantage at the beginning, but while we're playing, you just can't cheat. I want to cheat. You can't cheat, whatever. But anyway, so I had this plant, and I would water it. And as I was watering the plant, I would say all of these wonderful things. I'd say, "Oh my gosh, what a lovely, beautiful plant!" And I would stroke the leaves, and I'd say, "You're all green and purple, and you're growing." And he was quite sort of intrigued by this, and sort of with a growl on his face, snarled sort of look. He said, "What are you doing?" I'd say, "Oh, well, I'm taking care of my plant." Well, there came a time when he said, "I want to take care of your plant." I said, "No." I said, "No. I mean, you got to bring tenderness and kindness and love, or the plant will die." He said, "Really?" He said, "If I could be a little nicer, I could do it." I said, "Well, maybe, but you got to show me first." So, anyway, over time, he stopped saying stuff like suck my dick, and he started being kinder and nicer and sweeter. And eventually, I let him be the one to water my plant. And if he started to do it without saying kind things, oh, no, you got to say the kind things when you stroke the leaves. You got to be kind. And it grew beautifully. And when I would be away on vacation, the people in the children's unit would let him come into my office to water my plant. It was very special. So anyway, I love to play, and I do so much interpreting and conceptualizing and thinking. It's so that with Thomas, no, I had no desire to interpret. It's interesting, the space between us. I had no desire. Oh, Amy, you asked about Amy. Oh, I had no desire there either to interpret. I mean, I think, remember, I'd mentioned that Winnicott had said, and others as well, that if you interpret and use words, if anything, that can be an interference, that can impinge on the space that the two of you are co-creating, that wonderful in-between, that transitional space, that facilitating holding environment. So there you go. All right. Well, thank you all so much for your wonderful presence. I get one final look at those of you who've hung in, the MA''AYAN. Thank you so much for being here and for sending people my way, et cetera, et cetera. And all, oh, good. Stanley. Hello, Stanley. And John, I see some clapping here. Oh, good. Marilyn, Ruth, Donna. There's Donna clapped. Oh, okay. Rihanna. Good. And there's Donna again. All right. Well, listen, I don't know if you guys are going to be watching well, could if you're not in the US, maybe it's not that relevant, but the US figure skating championships in preparation for the Olympics. It's kind of exciting. All right. Bless you all. Susan, Levine, thank you for your smile. Dr. Ava, thank you, Ava.
Martha,
Hello to
thank you.
Paulina.
Thank you
Yes.
so much. This was just such a wonderful presentation. Just your generosity in time, but mostly in your authenticity and vulnerability and talking about the work, such complicated, deep work, and presenting it in a way that just is very meaningful and accessible, you know. So your authentic self comes through. I'm being very polite, but my authentic truer self will miss you. So, so thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for giving me this lovely experience. May you all have a wonderful day and the rest of your lives. But and certainly feel free to get in touch with me, please, for whatever reason. I mean, whatever reason. There you go.
Well, we'll go have ice cream.
There
Right.
you go. Non-dairy ice vegan. Thank you for that. All
All
right.
right.
Thank you,
All
Donna.
right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody, for
And
spending your Sunday
Barb Annunziato.
midday with us.
Yes. Oh, good. Bye-bye, Michael.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Oh,
Martha.
good.
Thank you so
Oh,
much.
good. Oh,
Meryl,
my.
Michael, you want to stay for a sec?
Sure.
Do I
Sure.
stay or do I go?
Oh,
It's
you
up
can
to
Either
go.
one.
you.
You,
I'll just say thank you, Martha. This was such a pleasure to be a part of putting this together with you, and just such an amazing, engaging, and obviously clinically useful presentation. Just so happy you were able to do this for us today.
Thanks. Thank you, Dr. Ava. Well, thank you. And these people remaining, you're very much, I now know how to say it, Sip and J, right? That's how we
There
say
you
it.
go.
The
Right.
first time you
correct.
Yeah,
said that,
Correct.
I thought you were talking about a sippy cup or something.
yeah.
And you
When
say,
I do
I'm
voice
Sip
to
and J.
text, it goes sip and J or something.
I get that now, but it's like it took me a while to kind of catch on. Anyway, well, I will sign off and let you all do your thing. But
Okay,
thank you for
thank you. Martha,
have me
thank you.
again
It's a
sometime.
pleasure.
Have
We'll
me
have you
again
back a
Absolutely.
fourth and fifth time.
There you go. There you go. All
Yeah.
righty.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye
Take
bye.
care.
And yes, Meryl, I let Dave go a long time ago.
Okay. If people could sign off, please, we're just going to stay to
Yeah, we have a
do a little
business
wrap up.
meeting. Right, we have a quick business meeting, internal business meeting. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. See you next time.
Could you please sign off?
Everybody. Yeah,
I think it's
we have
Marilyn and Stanley.
yeah,
If you
they're
could hit
going.
leave meeting, that would be helpful.
So they're going. Bye, Stanley. Hi, Stanley. Bye, Stanley. Bye, Mary. Bye, Marilyn. Kate Weber is not on screen. That might be part of the issue.
Marilyn, could you just hit the on the bottom right, if you hit leave, then you'll be out of the meeting.
Or I could just end this and Michael and Meryl, we could just pop back in for a sec. Or wait
Let's
another
do
minute.
that.
Let's do that. Okay, I'm going to end the meeting. Michael, let me stop recording. That would be